Hey there, welcome to Broaderos. Tonight, we've got hours of chilling horror stories combined with soothing rain sounds to help you relax and sleep. Before you drift off, leave a comment below and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe right away. If you end up not enjoying it, you can always take it back later. Get cozy and let the fear take over. The search for the monster. Have you ever felt the weight of something lurking just beyond your understanding? I often wonder if that feeling is merely a trick of the mind or if it signifies something more sinister, something waiting in the shadows of our reality. My name is Daniel, and I was once a researcher dedicated to unearthing the secrets of the natural world. But one summer, my obsession led me down a path that would forever alter my perception of reality. It all began with a whisper, a fleeting mention in a dusty old tome I discovered in the archives of the university library. The book chronicled encounters with a creature of legend, one said to dwell in the depths of the forest near the small town of Eldridge Hollow. Locals spoke of it in hushed tones, a monster that could warp reality itself, leaving those who saw it in a state of madness. This was no mere cryptid, it was a harbinger of the unknown, and the allure of uncovering its truth consumed me. As I prepared for my journey, a nagging feeling of dread began to settle in my chest. Friends warned me against venturing into the woods alone, citing strange occurrences and mysterious disappearances. Yet, the more they cautioned me, the more determined I became. It was as if the very notion of the monster was calling to me, pulling me towards an abyss I could scarcely comprehend. On the day I set off, the sky was an ominous gray, the air thick with humidity. I packed my gear, ensuring I had everything I needed: notebooks, a camera, and a flashlight that had seen better days. The townsfolk watched as I drove away, their faces a mix of concern and skepticism. As I reached the edge of the forest, I felt a shiver run down my spine, a warning I brushed aside, fueled by my need to uncover the truth. Entering the forest, the world transformed. The trees loomed tall, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, and the sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy above. With each step, I could hear the crunch of leaves beneath my boots, a reminder that I was no longer in the safety of civilization. My heart raced with excitement and fear, a potent mix that spurred me onward. As night fell, I set up camp in a clearing, the flickering fire casting shadows that danced ominously across the trees. I thought about the creature I sought, what it might look like, how it might behave. Would it be a grotesque beast, or something more subtle, something that could blend seamlessly into the darkness? I could almost hear the whispers of the forest, enticing and foreboding, as if the very air was alive with secrets. As I lay in my tent, the weight of the world pressed heavily upon me. The wind howled outside, creating a symphony of eerie sounds that played on my nerves. Was that a rustle? A growl? My mind raced, conjuring images of the unimaginable. I had come seeking a monster, but was it possible I had stumbled into a realm that defied logic and reason? I fell into an uneasy sleep, plagued by nightmares that blurred the line between reality and fiction. Shadows danced in my mind, taunting me with the promise of revelation. Little did I know, the true horror lay not in the creature I sought, but in the darkness that lurked within my own psyche. The next morning, I awoke to a heavy mist that hung over the forest like a shroud. It enveloped the trees, transforming the familiar into something otherworldly. The air felt thick, almost electric, as if charged with the energy of the unknown. I unzipped my tent, peering into the gray world outside. The forest was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears, urging you to listen for something that might not be there. Determined to begin my search, I packed up my camp, feeling a strange compulsion to venture deeper into the woods. Each step took me further from the safety of my makeshift home, and with every crack of a twig beneath my feet, a sense of foreboding crept closer. The stories I had read echoed in my mind. Those who sought the monster often became the hunted. I followed a narrow trail that wound through the trees, my senses heightened. The morning light struggled to break through the dense foliage, casting long shadows that danced around me. I paused to take notes, my pencil scratching against the paper as I documented my findings and observations. It was all too easy to lose track of time in the enchanting embrace of the forest, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Hours passed, and the landscape transformed. The trees grew thicker, their gnarled roots twisting around stones like serpents. I stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin, its withered walls sagging under the weight of neglect. The door hung ajar, inviting yet foreboding. I felt an inexplicable pull towards it, as if it held secrets just waiting to be uncovered. Pushing the door open, I was greeted by darkness. Dust motes danced in the faint light that streamed through cracks in the walls. The air was stale, filled with the scent of decay. I stepped inside, the floor creaking beneath my weight. Old furniture lay strewn about, remnants of lives once lived. On a rickety table, I found a journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. I flipped through it, my heart racing as I read about the previous occupants' descent into madness. They spoke of voices in the night, shadows creeping closer, and an insatiable hunger that drove them to the brink. My hands trembled as I realized that they, too, had sought the monster, only to be consumed by their own fears. I quickly closed the journal, a chill running down my spine. As I turned to leave, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a reflection in the broken mirror hanging on the wall. My own face stared back at me, but there was something wrong. The eyes were too dark, too hollow. I stepped closer, peering into the depths of the glass. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of movement behind me. I spun around, but the cabin was empty. A sense of dread washed over me, and I fled the cabin, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear my breath quickening, echoing in my ears as I burst out into the forest once more. The trees loomed overhead, their branches now resembling skeletal hands reaching out to ensnare me. I had come searching for a monster, but what I found instead was something far more terrifying, a glimpse into the darkness that lay within. The further I ventured into the woods, the more I felt the ground shift beneath me. The trail became overgrown, twisting into unfamiliar paths that seemed to lead me in circles. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, and whispers filled the air, blending with the rustling leaves. It was as if the forest itself was alive, breathing, watching, and waiting. I stumbled upon a small clearing, the sun piercing through the mist just enough to illuminate a stone altar at its center. It was covered in strange symbols, etched deep into the surface. The atmosphere thickened, a sense of foreboding surrounding me. I approached cautiously, drawn in by an unseen force. My fingers traced the symbols, their meaning lost to time but resonating with an eerie familiarity. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the clearing, sending chills down my spine. I whipped around, heart racing as I skinned the tree line. My breath hitched as I caught a glimpse of something moving in the shadows, something large and inhuman. Panic surged through me, and I instinctively reached for my flashlight, illuminating the darkness ahead. The beam of light cut through the fog, revealing only trees and the quiet hum of nature. But the feeling of being hunted grew stronger, each heartbeat echoing in my ears. I had to leave, had to escape whatever presence stalked me. I turned back towards the path, but my legs felt heavy, weighed down by an invisible force. Then, I saw it, a figure lurking just beyond the edge of the clearing, Its shape was distorted, blending seamlessly into the shadows, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural light. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to run. But my feet felt rooted to the ground, paralyzed by fear. The creature stepped forward, and the whispers around me intensified, clawing at my sanity. It was then that I realized I was no longer searching for a monster. I had become the prey, ensnared in a web of my own making. The creature loomed closer, and I could feel the temperature drop, the air thickening with an oppressive energy. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage as if it sought to escape. I strained my eyes, trying to discern the features of this thing that had come to claim me, but it remained cloaked in shadow, a dark silhouette against the backdrop of the clearing. Every instinct screamed for me to flee, yet I found myself frozen, a spectator to my own terror. The whispers escalated, becoming a cacophony that drowned out rational thought. "Run," they seemed to say, but my body betrayed me, rooted to the spot as the creature drew near. Then, a flash of movement caught my eye, something darting in the underbrush, momentarily distracting the monster. It hesitated, its glowing eyes shifting, and that was all the impetus I needed. I turned on my heel and sprinted into the dense foliage, branches clawing at my clothes and skin as I pushed through. The world blurred around me, tree trunks, leaves, shadows, all merging into a chaotic tapestry of fear. I heard the creature's growl echoing behind me, a deep, rumbling sound that sent shockwaves of dread through my veins. I didn't dare look back. I just focused on putting one foot in front of the other, desperately searching for the path I had come from. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled into a narrow path and veered onto it, my heart racing faster than I could keep pace. My breath came in gasps, and the air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. I ran until my legs ached, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. As I burst into a small clearing, I skidded to a halt, scanning my surroundings for any sign of the creature. The mist had thickened again, swirling around me like a living entity. I desperately tried to catch my breath, leaning against a tree trunk for support, its bark rough against my palm. I took a moment to collect myself, reminding myself of the rational world I'd left behind. I fumbled for my notebook, frantically jotting down what I had experienced. Every detail was crucial. My hand trembled as I wrote, the words seeming to flow from me in a fevered rush. I had to document this before the memories slipped away, before I succumbed to the madness. Suddenly, a chilling realization struck me. The woods were silent. The usual sounds of nature, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, were absent. The silence hung heavily, a warning that something was very wrong. I looked up, feeling a prickle at the back of my neck, a sensation that sent shivers coursing down my spine. Just then, a soft rustling came from the bushes nearby, breaking the eerie stillness. My heart leapt into my throat as I turned, fearing the worst. But instead of the creature, a small deer emerged, its eyes wide and frightened. It paused, glancing back at the trees before bolting away into the underbrush. I could only watch, my mind racing with confusion. Was the creature still near? Had I merely stumbled into its territory? The deer's fright echoed my own, amplifying my sense of vulnerability. I realized I needed to find safety, and quickly. I gathered my things and made my way back to the path, adrenaline surging through my veins. As I walked, I began to notice something unsettling. The path seemed to shift, morphing underfoot. The trees around me appeared to close in, their twisted branches blocking the light and narrowing my field of vision. I fought to suppress the growing panic, forcing myself to breathe deeply and remain calm. I could not allow this forest to manipulate me further. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ground. The daylight dwindled, and I felt the darkness creeping in, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. I found a small hillock and climbed to the top, hoping for a clearer view, perhaps a glimpse of a way out. From my vantage point, I surveyed the landscape. The expanse of trees stretched endlessly, a sea of green that now seemed hostile. I squinted, trying to make sense of the unfamiliar terrain, but the mist returned, swirling up from the forest floor, obscuring my view. Desperate, I considered my options. I could either attempt to find my way back to the cabin, or I could keep pressing forward, hoping to stumble upon some sign of civilization. But the weight of dread settled heavily in my chest, each choice filled with its own perils. As twilight deepened, I heard it again, the low, growling sound, closer this time. Panic surged anew, and I had no time to think. I slid down the hillock, fear propelling me forward as I broke into a run, the underbrush scratching at my arms and legs. In the chaos of flight, my mind raced with questions. What was this creature? What did it want with me? My research had been built on logic and science, yet here I was, lost in a nightmare that defied explanation. The growl echoed behind me, the sound reverberating through the trees as I navigated through the darkness. I could feel the creature gaining on me, its presence an inescapable shadow. I stumbled upon a narrow ravine, its steep walls looming ominously, and without thinking, I leapt across it, praying for safety on the other side. The ground was uneven, and I fell, scraping my palms against the rough earth. But I didn't stop. I rolled to my feet and continued to run, my heart hammering as adrenaline coursed through my veins. Somewhere in the depths of my mind, I realized that this wasn't just a search for a monster. It was a descent into a psychological abyss, a confrontation with the fears that had long haunted me. Each step drew me closer to the edge of my sanity, and as I fled into the unknown, I could feel the darkness closing in around me. I ran until my lungs burned, the sharp air searing my throat as I pressed on. Each footfall felt heavier, the weight of exhaustion settling in my bones. The growl faded, but not completely. It lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of the terror pursuing me. I stumbled into a thicket, the branches clawing at my skin like the specters of my own fears. The darkness deepened, and soon I was surrounded by shadows, the trees looming like ancient sentinels. I could no longer tell which direction I had come from or where I was heading. My heart raced, a relentless drumbeat against the suffocating silence. I needed to find shelter, a safe haven to collect my thoughts and gather my strength. As I pressed deeper into the forest, the mist thickened, swirling around me like a living entity. I felt disoriented, as if the very ground beneath my feet was shifting. Then, through the fog, I spotted a flicker of light, an ember glowing in the distance. Hope surged within me, and I pushed forward, drawn toward the illumination. The light grew brighter as I approached, revealing a small cabin, not unlike the one I had fled earlier. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, to escape this eerie place, but my body was exhausted, and the prospect of safety was too alluring to ignore. I reached the door, my hand trembling as I pushed it open. Inside, the cabin was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and something else, a hint of decay that lingered just beneath the surface. I stepped in, cautiously shutting the door behind me. The warmth from the hearth felt welcoming, and I approached, eager to bask in its glow. The interior was rustic, with wooden beams arching overhead and old furniture scattered about. A table sat in the center, covered with a thick layer of dust, but I could make out remnants of previous inhabitants, a tattered book, a half-empty mug, and what appeared to be a photograph, faded and curled at the edges. I picked it up, my heart sinking as I recognized the faces, people who had once sought refuge here, now lost to the forest. Pushing the dread aside, I searched for anything that might help me make sense of my situation. I rifled through drawers and cabinets, my breath catching in my throat as I unearthed more journals, fragments of lives interrupted, tales of fear and despair that echoed my own experiences. The stories spoke of the creature, detailing encounters that ranged from terrifying to outright maddening. Each page seemed to pulse with the weight of knowledge, each line a warning. In one journal, a passage stood out, its ink smudged and frayed. The forest watches. It knows your fears and feeds on them. It will take you, twist you, until you no longer recognize yourself. The words sent a chill down my spine. It was a revelation that resonated too deeply, as if the forest itself was aware of my presence, waiting to exploit my vulnerabilities. Suddenly, the door creaked behind me, and I spun around, heart pounding. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man, gaunt and disheveled, with wild eyes that flickered with both fear and recognition. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, his voice low and trembling. "It's not safe." "Who are you?" I stammered, backing away instinctively. "What do you mean?" "I've been here too long," he murmured, his gaze darting nervously to the door. I thought I could find answers, but it only brought me closer to it. "You need to leave. It's coming." Before I could respond, a low growl echoed outside, reverberating through the cabin walls. The man's face blanched, and he scrambled for the window, peering through the grime. "We don't have much time," he said, urgency lacing his tone. "You need to understand. The monster isn't what you think." "What do you mean?" I pressed, fear creeping into my voice. "What is it?" He turned to me, eyes wide with a desperate intensity. "It's a manifestation of your fears, your darkest thoughts made flesh. It thrives on isolation, on doubt. The longer you stay here, the more it takes hold of you." I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me. The encounters I had experienced, the creeping dread, the whispers of the forest, it all began to make a twisted sense. I had come searching for a creature, but what I found was a reflection of my own psyche, laid bare before me. But I needed to escape. I had to find a way out of this nightmare. The man continued, "If we don't leave now, it will consume us both. We have to stick together. There's a path through the woods, a way to break free, but it's dangerous. The forest won't let us go easily." As the growling outside grew louder, a sense of urgency propelled me into action. "Let's go," I urged, my mind racing with the implications of his words. "Lead the way." He nodded, and together we moved toward the door, adrenaline coursing through our veins. But just as we reached the threshold, a shadow flickered at the edge of the clearing, and the creature's eyes gleamed in the darkness. It was no longer a distant threat. It was here, stalking us with an intent that chilled my blood. I felt a surge of fear that threatened to swallow me whole, but I forced myself to focus. We had to escape, had to fight against the primal instinct to run. I stepped out into the darkness, determination igniting within me as I prepared to confront whatever lay ahead. The creature's growl reverberated through the clearing, deep and primal, sending a jolt of terror through my body. My heart raced as I stepped into the cold night air, my companion close at my side. Together, we peered into the darkness, our breaths mingling in anxious puffs. "It can smell fear," the man whispered urgently, glancing over his shoulder. "Stay close to me, and whatever you do, don't look back." I nodded, adrenaline coursing through my veins as we pushed into the thickening fog. The path before us twisted and turned, a serpentine route that felt alive, as though it shifted beneath our feet with each step. I struggled to keep pace, my mind racing with the weight of the moment. The forest felt more oppressive than ever, the trees closing in around us as we moved deeper into its clutches. The growling sound followed us, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond our vision. The whispers returned, low and insidious, echoing the man's warning. They seemed to know my fears, twisting them into a cacophony of dread that clawed at my sanity. I tried to focus on the path, to ground myself in the present, but the shadows danced at the periphery of my vision, beckoning me to succumb to the darkness. "We need to keep moving," the man urged, his voice a lifeline in the chaos. "The further we go, the harder it will be for it to follow." I could hear the panic in his tone, the urgency fueling my determination. I picked up my pace, matching his hurried stride. The forest was eerily quiet now, the usual sounds of nocturnal life silenced as if the world held its breath. With each step, I felt the weight of the creature's presence, an invisible force pressing in on us. We pressed onward, the fog swirling around us like a shroud. I stole glances at the man, trying to glean any insight from his expression. Fear had etched deep lines into his face, but there was something else, a flicker of hope that mirrored my own desperation. If we could escape this place, perhaps we could find a way to banish the darkness that threatened to consume us. "Do you have a plan?" I gasped, struggling to keep pace. "How do we get out of here?" He hesitated for a moment, his brow furrowing as he navigated the twisting path. "There's a stream nearby," he said finally. "If we can reach it, we can follow it downstream. It leads to a road, a way back to safety. But we have to be careful. The creature will do everything it can to keep us here." As if in response, the growl erupted again, louder this time, echoing through the trees. My heart raced, and I felt a surge of panic rise within me. "We can't let it catch us," I exclaimed, urgency propelling my legs forward. The man nodded, determination setting his jaw. "Then we run." We took off, sprinting through the underbrush, branches whipping against our faces as we charged deeper into the woods. My breath came in quick gasps, and with every stride, I could feel the ground beneath me shifting, the path becoming more treacherous. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest, urging me to succumb to despair. But we pushed on, navigating the treacherous terrain, and after what felt like an eternity, we finally stumbled upon the stream. It glimmered under the pale light of the moon, a silver ribbon cutting through the darkness. My heart leapt with hope as I caught my breath, the sound of rushing water filling the air. "Stay close," the man instructed, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding us. "We'll follow it downstream." We moved along the bank, the water gurgling softly as it wound its way through the forest. The sense of urgency propelled us forward, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The air felt thick with anticipation, the forest holding its breath as we hurried along the edge. Suddenly, the growl erupted again, closer this time, reverberating through the trees. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to look, dread pooling in my stomach. "It's coming!" I shouted, panic rising within me. "Don't look back," the man commanded, his voice firm. "Keep moving." We sprinted alongside the stream, its current steady and unwavering, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around us. The shadows loomed behind us, but I forced myself to focus on the water, on the path ahead. I could feel the creature gaining on us, a primal instinct urging me to flee, to escape the inevitable. The stream widened as we moved further downstream, the water now rushing with a ferocity that mirrored my own growing fear. I could hear the whispers rising in a crescendo, taunting me, feeding off my desperation. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to drown out the noise. But the growl was relentless, echoing through the trees. I risked a glance back, and my breath caught in my throat. The creature emerged from the shadows, a hulking figure with gleaming eyes that seemed to burn with an inner light. Its form was a grotesque amalgamation of nightmares, shifting and twisting in a way that defied reality. "Run!" I screamed, fear propelling me forward. The man surged ahead, and I followed, the sound of my heartbeat drowning out everything else. The forest became a blur, branches whipping past me as I pushed myself harder, adrenaline fueling my every step. But just as I thought we might escape, the creature lunged from the darkness, its massive form barreling toward us. I could feel the ground shake beneath its weight, and I knew we had to reach the road. My lungs burned as I fought against the rising tide of despair. Almost there, the man shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. I could see a faint glow in the distance, a sign of civilization beckoning us forward. We sprinted toward the light, desperation propelling us through the shadows. But the creature was closing in, its growl a chilling promise of doom. I could feel its breath on my neck, hot and suffocating, urging me to give in to fear. Just when I thought it would consume me whole, we burst into a small clearing, the light growing brighter around us. I saw it, a road stretching out before us, faintly illuminated by the distant glow of street lamps. My heart raced as we pushed forward, hope igniting within me. But just as we reached the edge of the clearing, the growl echoed once more, a final, terrifying sound. With a surge of determination, I sprinted toward the road, feeling the creature's presence closing in behind me. We were almost free. I could see the safety of the street, the warmth of civilization beckoning us forward. But as I reached the edge of the clearing, the ground shifted once more, and I felt a force pull me back. The darkness surged, wrapping around my limbs like a vice, dragging me toward the shadows. "No!" I screamed, fighting against the grip of the creature's presence. The man turned, his eyes wide with terror as he reached for me, but it was too late. The darkness enveloped me, swallowing me whole, and I felt the last remnants of hope slip through my fingers. The world faded to black, the whispers rising to a deafening crescendo as I plunged into the abyss. I awoke with a start, gasping for breath, my heart pounding against my ribcage like a caged animal. The air around me felt thick and suffocating, clinging to my skin like damp cloth. As I struggled to sit up, a wave of disorientation washed over me. Where was I? The memory of the creature loomed large in my mind, but as I looked around, I realized I was no longer in the forest. The room was dimly lit, the walls constructed of rough-hewn wood. A single flickering light bulb hung from the ceiling, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the floor. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of the darkness that had claimed me. Panic surged as I realized I was alone. The man, the only other person who had shared this nightmare, was gone. I scrambled to my feet, my body unsteady as I surveyed my surroundings. There was a small table in the corner, cluttered with remnants of what appeared to be hastily abandoned belongings, clothes, a backpack, a half-finished meal growing cold. The room held a claustrophobic quality, closing in around me as I fought against the rising tide of dread. Where was I? Had I been taken by the creature? My mind raced as I recalled the last moments before the darkness enveloped me, the man reaching for me, the growl echoing in my ears. I felt a chill run down my spine as I remembered his warning, the creature thrives on isolation, on doubt. I needed to escape. I moved toward the door, my heart pounding as I turned the handle and pushed it open. The hallway outside was empty, eerily quiet, with faded wallpaper peeling from the walls. I stepped out cautiously, the sound of my footsteps muted against the warm floorboards. The air felt different here, thicker, charged with an unsettling energy. I hesitated for a moment, straining to listen for any sounds that might indicate where I was or if anyone else was nearby. But all I heard was the distant echo of my own breath and the faint rustle of something shifting in the shadows. I moved forward, each step feeling heavier as I ventured deeper into the unknown. The hallway twisted and turned, leading me to what appeared to be a series of interconnected rooms, all dimly lit and cloaked in an atmosphere of decay. There were no windows, no signs of life, just the oppressive silence that wrapped around me like a shroud. I pushed through a door, stepping into what looked like a living area. The furniture was old and worn, but what caught my attention was a large mirror hanging on the wall. The glass was cracked, distorting my reflection into something grotesque and alien. I stepped closer, examining my own face. I looked exhausted, haunted by the horrors I had endured. My eyes were wide with fear, a deep shadow etched beneath them. Suddenly, a movement in the reflection caught my eye. I turned abruptly, but there was nothing behind me. I felt my breath quicken, a shiver of apprehension crawling up my spine. The mirror seemed to pulse with an unsettling energy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me. I tore my gaze away, forcing myself to focus. I needed to find a way out, to escape this nightmare. I turned back to the hallway, my footsteps echoing in the stillness as I continued my search. As I moved through the dimly lit rooms, I stumbled upon remnants of the lives that had been here before me, faded photographs, children's toys, and journals filled with frantic scrawls. Each item told a story, a haunting reminder of those who had once sought refuge in this place, only to be consumed by the darkness. One journal caught my eye, its pages yellowed and crumpled. I opened it, scanning the entries filled with desperate pleas for help, accounts of encounters with the creature, and fragmented thoughts that spiraled into madness. I felt a sense of dread settle in my stomach as I read the words, "It sees you. It knows your fears. Don't look in the mirror." A cold realization gripped me. The mirror, an entry point, a portal to the creature's world. I quickly closed the journal, the warning ringing in my ears as I made my way to the exit. The air felt electric, charged with an unseen force that pressed against my skin. Just as I reached the door, the growl echoed through the hallway, a chilling sound that reverberated through the walls. I froze, terror coursing through my veins. It was close, closer than ever before. Without thinking, I flung the door open and sprinted down the hall. My breath came in ragged gasps as I raced toward the only exit I could find. I had to escape before it was too late. I burst through another door, and to my relief, I found myself outside, the cool night air washing over me like a balm. I was in a clearing surrounded by trees, but this place felt different from the forest I had known. The moonlight illuminated the ground, casting eerie shadows that danced around me. But there was no time to waste. The growl echoed again, closer this time, and I could feel the ground tremble beneath me. I scanned my surroundings, looking for any sign of an escape route. My heart raced as I spotted a narrow path leading into the woods, an instinctive urge to flee pushing me forward. As I sprinted down the path, I could hear the branches snapping behind me, the creature giving chase. I pushed myself harder, adrenaline surging through my veins as I fought against the rising panic. I had to keep moving. I had to survive. The shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, whispering and taunting me as I navigated through the dense underbrush. The further I ran, the more I felt the weight of the creature's presence closing in. It was as if the forest itself was conspiring against me, the trees twisting and turning in a desperate attempt to ensnare me. Suddenly, I stumbled into a clearing, my heart racing as I skidded to a halt. The ground dropped away into a steep ravine, a dark abyss stretching out before me. There was no way forward, and the growl was now deafening, echoing through the trees like a death knell. Panic surged within me as I turned to face the shadows creeping closer, the creature emerging from the darkness. It stood at the edge of the clearing, a hulking mass of terror that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent hunger, fixated on me as if I were its prey. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. There was nowhere to go. The isolation of this place pressed down on me, feeding my fear. I took a step back, my pulse quickening as I realized the truth. I was trapped. But as the creature advanced, something deep within me ignited, a spark of defiance. I refused to succumb to the darkness. I was more than just prey. I was a survivor. With a surge of determination, I turned and sprinted toward the edge of the ravine. The growl grew louder, the shadows closing in, but I wouldn't let fear control me. I had to confront this monster, to face the darkness that threatened to consume me. I leaped into the unknown, plunging into the abyss, ready to fight for my life. The air rushed past me in a cold embrace, the sensation of weightlessness overtaking my senses as I plummeted into the darkness. Time seemed to stretch as I fell, the world above me fading into a distant memory. Panic surged within, but alongside it came a fierce determination. I refused to let the creature win. As I fell, I felt a strange pull, as if the darkness itself were guiding me deeper into its depths. I braced for impact, the ground rushing up to meet me. But instead of the violent collision I expected, I landed on something soft, a thick bed of moss that cushioned my fall. I rolled to the side, scrambling to my feet as I took in my surroundings. I was in a subterranean cavern, dimly lit by a faint, otherworldly glow. The walls glistened with moisture, and the air was heavy with the scent of earth and decay. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, and the ground was uneven, littered with rocks and debris. I stood still for a moment, my heart racing as I tried to gather my bearings. The sound of rushing water echoed through the cavern, a haunting melody that drew me closer. I could feel the creature's presence above me, a malignant force hovering just out of reach. It was still hunting me, and I needed to move before it found a way to follow. I started toward the sound of the water, each step cautious as I navigated the treacherous terrain. Shadows danced along the walls, playing tricks on my mind, and I could feel the whispers returning, wrapping around me like tendrils of smoke. It's too late. You can't escape. It knows your fears. I shook my head, forcing the voices back. I had come too far to give in now. The water's song grew louder, guiding me deeper into the cavern, promising a way out of this nightmare. As I rounded a bend, I stumbled upon a small underground stream, its water shimmering in the dim light. The current flowed steadily, the surface reflecting a kaleidoscope of colors that danced like fireflies. For a moment, I was entranced, the beauty of the scene taking my breath away. But then I remembered the creature. I had no time to waste. I knelt by the water's edge, cupping my hands to drink, hoping it would rejuvenate me. The cool liquid quenched my thirst, bringing a moment of clarity amid the chaos. I needed to stay focused. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed from behind me, breaking the spell. I whipped around, heart in my throat, and my breath caught as I saw the dark silhouette emerging from the shadows. It was the creature, its form shifting and undulating as it drew closer, the glow of its eyes piercing through the darkness. My pulse quickened as I backed away, scrambling to my feet. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of despair urging me to surrender. But I wouldn't let it win. I had to find a way to escape this hell. I glanced around frantically, searching for a means of defense or an escape route. The cavern seemed to stretch on endlessly, but the current of the stream beckoned me onward. The water, I thought, it might lead to the surface. With renewed resolve, I turned and sprinted along the stream, the water gurgling around my feet as I navigated the rocky banks. The creature followed, its growl echoing through the cavern, each step closer sending tremors of dread coursing through my veins. The path narrowed, twisting and turning as I ducked beneath overhanging rocks and vaulted over boulders. The growl intensified, a menacing reminder that it would not give up easily. I could feel its breath on my back, hot and oppressive, urging me to falter. But I pressed on, the sound of rushing water guiding me through the darkness. The cavern opened up ahead, and I could see a faint glimmer of light in the distance. Hope ignited within me, propelling me forward as I raced toward the illumination. As I neared the source of the light, the cavern walls began to shimmer, reflecting the colors of the water and creating an otherworldly spectacle. I could hear the roar of a waterfall, its sound mixing with the creature's growl, forming a haunting symphony that sent chills down my spine. I burst into the chamber, and my breath caught in my throat at the sight before me. The waterfall cascaded into a crystalline pool, the water sparkling like diamonds in the soft light. I stood at the edge, mesmerized by the beauty, but the sense of impending doom lurked just behind me. I could feel the creature closing in, its growl reverberating through the air. I glanced back, and my heart sank as I saw it emerging from the shadows, a dark mass of terror intent on claiming me. It was now or never. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I had to leap into the water, trusting that it would carry me to safety. The current surged below, promising a way out of this nightmare. With a surge of adrenaline, I jumped, plunging into the icy depths. The water enveloped me, a sudden rush that stole the breath from my lungs. I fought against the current, kicking and thrashing as I swam deeper, the pressure of the water pulling me into its embrace. I could feel the darkness hovering above, the creature's growl echoing through the water as it searched for me. My heart raced as I pushed myself harder, determined to break free from its grasp. The light above grew fainter, but I pressed on, the water rushing around me. As I swam deeper, I felt a strange sensation wash over me, a calming force that pulled me further into the abyss. I let instinct guide me, trusting my body to find its way to the surface. The whispers faded, replaced by the soothing sound of water. And then, I broke through, bursting into the air with a gasp. I floundered for a moment, trying to regain my bearings, and as I did, I spotted a small ledge nearby. I swam toward it, my limbs heavy with exhaustion, and pulled myself onto the rocky surface. I collapsed onto the ledge, gasping for breath as I lay in the cool night air. The sound of the waterfall cascaded behind me, a comforting lullaby that soothed my frayed nerves. I had escaped the creature, at least for now. But as I lay there, catching my breath, a chilling realization crept over me. I was alone, isolated in this strange place, and I could feel the darkness closing in around me. I had evaded the creature, but its presence lingered, a reminder that it would always be watching. I glanced back at the water, my mind racing with questions. Where was I? How could I find my way back to safety? And most importantly, how could I confront the creature that hunted me? The answers remained elusive, shrouded in the shadows of my fear. I had survived the fall, but I was still trapped in a nightmare that refused to let go. And in the silence that followed, I could feel the whispers returning, beckoning me back into the darkness. As I lay on the ledge, the cool air kissed my skin, and I took a moment to steady my racing heart. I could hear the waterfall's roar behind me, its thunderous sound a stark contrast to the unsettling silence that enveloped me. The darkness loomed, pressing against my senses, but I knew I couldn't afford to linger here. The realization that I was still being hunted sent a jolt of adrenaline through my veins. I had escaped the immediate threat of the creature, but I was far from safe. I had to figure out how to confront it, understanding its nature, its weaknesses, if there were any. My mind raced as I scanned my surroundings, searching for anything that might aid me in this battle. The ledge I lay on was small and jagged, extending into a vast cavern that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. To my left, the wall curved inward, and to my right, the waterfall cascaded down into the inky depths. I knew I couldn't go back into the water. It could be a trap. Instead, I focused on the rocky surface, looking for a way to climb up and gain some height. I pushed myself to my feet, wincing as pain flared in my legs from my earlier exertion. Gritting my teeth, I began to navigate the rough edges of the cavern wall, using every ounce of strength I had left. My hands scraped against the rough stone, but I pressed on, driven by the instinct to survive. As I climbed, I could hear the distant growl of the creature, its voice a haunting reminder that it was still close. I paused for a moment, my heart pounding in my ears, and glanced back at the waterfall. The moonlight glimmered off the surface of the water, creating an ethereal glow that beckoned me to stay. But I couldn't afford to be lured by its beauty. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached a small ledge higher up the wall. It provided a better vantage point, allowing me to survey the cavern below. I could see the water pooling in the center, and the shadows danced menacingly around the edges. I took a deep breath, my pulse quickening as I prepared to face the darkness that lurked below. In the silence, I gathered my thoughts. The creature thrived on fear, on the isolation it created. But I was no longer just a victim. I had faced it, and I had survived. Now, I needed to take back control. I glanced around the ledge, searching for anything that could be used as a weapon. My fingers brushed against a sharp rock, its edge jagged and threatening. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. I clutched it tightly, feeling its weight anchor me in my resolve. As I waited, the growl grew louder, reverberating through the cavern like a storm approaching. I felt the air change, thickening with tension as the creature drew closer. It was time to confront the monster that haunted me. I leaned forward, trying to peer into the shadows where the creature lurked. Its form was just beyond the edge of the light, a dark silhouette that twisted and writhed. The glowing eyes pierced through the darkness, locking onto mine with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. "You think you can hide from me?" It seemed to taunt, its voice a low, guttural growl that echoed in my mind. "You cannot escape what you fear." A surge of anger coursed through me, a response to its manipulation. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted, my voice stronger than I felt. "You won't take me." With that declaration, the creature lunged forward, and I instinctively stepped back, heart racing. It emerged from the shadows, a monstrous figure cloaked in darkness, its body shifting like smoke. But I was ready. As it approached, I threw the sharp rock with all my strength, aiming for its glowing eyes. The rock struck true, and the creature let out a howl of rage and pain. Its form flickered as it recoiled, momentarily stunned. I seized the opportunity, scrambling back to the edge of the ledge, adrenaline surging through my body. "You think you can hurt me?" it hissed, its voice laced with fury. "You are nothing but a fleeting thought in my domain." I stood my ground, fear and defiance intertwining within me. "You don't control me anymore," I yelled back, finding strength in my words. "I won't let you take me." With that proclamation, I launched myself from the ledge, plunging into the depths of the cavern, but this time with purpose. I hit the water and was instantly submerged, the cold enveloping me as I swam against the current. I could feel the creature's rage reverberating through the water, but I fought through the darkness, propelling myself forward. The water was fierce, and I struggled against it, but my resolve pushed me onward. I had to find a way out, a way to escape this nightmare once and for all. As I swam, I remembered the pool I had seen earlier, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly glow. I focused on that image, using it as my guiding light through the depths. The growl echoed behind me, a haunting reminder of the creature's pursuit, but I pushed forward, the promise of freedom spurring me on. After what felt like an eternity, I finally broke the surface, gasping for air as I emerged into the light of the cavern. The water cascaded down around me, creating a dazzling display of light and shadow. I could see the waterfall ahead, its roaring sound a symphony of power and possibility. I swam toward it, each stroke fueled by the desperation to escape. I felt the creature's presence hovering just behind me, but I refused to let fear take hold. I was not just running from the monster, I was running toward my freedom. I reached the edge of the pool and scrambled onto the rocky shore, the water splashing around me as I gasped for breath. The glow of the waterfall beckoned, and without hesitation, I dashed toward it. I could feel the creature's growl reverberating through the air, a last desperate attempt to reclaim its prey. As I reached the edge of the waterfall, I leaped forward, surrendering myself to the cascade. The water engulfed me, and I plunged into the depths once more, my heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. This time, as I swam, I felt the current pulling me upward, guiding me toward the surface. I fought against the darkness that threatened to consume me, and with every stroke, I felt the grip of the creature loosening. I was breaking free. I emerged from the water, gasping for breath, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. The moonlight bathed me in its soft glow, illuminating the path ahead. I was no longer trapped in the cavern, I was free. But as I turned to look back, I could see the creature lingering at the edge of the water, its eyes glowing with fury and despair. I had escaped, but it was still there, waiting in the shadows, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked within me. I took a step back, feeling the cool earth beneath my feet. I was free from its grasp, but I knew I had to confront the fear it had instilled in me. With a deep breath, I summoned my courage. "Your power over me is broken," I declared, my voice steady and firm. "You are nothing without my fear." The creature shrieked in rage, its form flickering as it dissolved into the shadows. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a release from the chains of terror that had bound me for so long. I had faced my fear and emerged victorious, but I also understood the importance of the battle I had fought. I turned away from the water and began my journey back toward the light, ready to reclaim my life. I had survived the darkness, and now I would embrace the dawn. Secrets of the basement. The air was thick with the scent of paint and dust when I first stepped into my new home. It was a modest two-story house, nestled in a quiet neighborhood that seemed to belong to a bygone era. The wooden floors creaked beneath my feet, a comforting reminder of the history that lived within these walls. As I wandered through the rooms, I felt an unsettling thrill, a mix of excitement and anxiety. I had moved here to escape the chaos of my previous life, but little did I know that the past had a way of haunting those who sought refuge. It started with a question I found myself asking as I descended the narrow staircase leading to the basement: what secrets lie beneath the surface? The dim light flickered as I reached the bottom step, illuminating a space filled with shadows. It felt colder here, the air heavier, as if the very walls were keeping something hidden. I hesitated, a chill creeping down my spine. My curiosity pulled me further in, but a sense of foreboding tugged at my mind. In the corner of the basement, obscured by cobwebs and dust, was a door I hadn't noticed before. It was old, the wood warped and worn, with rusty hinges that groaned in protest as I pushed it open. The creak echoed through the silence, a sound that felt too loud in the oppressive quiet. Beyond the door lay a room that looked like it had been forgotten by time, a small chamber, dimly lit and eerily preserved. My heart raced as I took in the sight before me. The walls were lined with strange, rusted implements and faded photographs that hinted at a grim history. This was no ordinary basement, it was a room of torment. My mind raced with questions, but the air felt thick with dread, as if the very atmosphere pressed against me, urging me to leave. Yet, I couldn't turn away. I stepped inside, compelled by an unseen force, and that was when I saw them. At first, they appeared as shadows, hunched figures huddled in the corners of the room, their faces obscured by the darkness. I blinked, trying to convince myself that I was imagining things, but the figures began to take shape. They looked almost human, yet there was something off about them, something that made my stomach churn. Their eyes were hollow, devoid of life, but as they turned to me, a glimmer of recognition flickered in their depths. I stumbled backward, my breath quickening. What had I discovered? The realization washed over me like ice water. These were the remnants of forgotten souls, trapped in a place where time had no meaning. The room felt alive, pulsating with the weight of their suffering. I could hear whispers, soft and unintelligible, merging into a cacophony of despair that filled my ears. It was as if they were warning me, trying to communicate a truth that was buried deep within this place. I turned to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening thud, plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I pounded on the door, my heart racing in my chest. I could feel their presence closing in, the shadows shifting and swirling as if they were alive. I could hear their voices now, clearer, echoing through the confines of my mind. "Stay with us." A shiver ran down my spine, and I realized that I had stumbled into something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. These were not just memories of pain, they were the remnants of lives stolen away, trapped in this purgatory of despair. I had become a part of their story, a witness to their torment, and in that moment, I knew there would be no escape. The shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, and I felt the room constricting around me as if it were a living entity, feeding off my fear. I strained against the door, the cool wood biting into my palms as I pushed with all my strength. It wouldn't budge. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, echoing the desperate cries of those lost souls. "Help!" I shouted, my voice hoarse and trembling. There was no response, only the rustling of the darkness surrounding me. The whispers intensified, swirling into a chaotic storm of sound that sent my thoughts spiraling. "Stay. Help us." They beckoned to me, their voices weaving a spell that tugged at my sanity. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate to block out the nightmarish scene unfolding around me. In the darkness, I could feel their cold, spectral fingers brushing against my skin. They reached for me, drawing closer with each heartbeat. I opened my eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of their faces, twisted expressions of anguish and despair. Their mouths moved, but I couldn't hear their words. It was a silent scream, one that resonated deep within my soul, awakening something primal inside me. Fighting against the paralyzing fear, I forced myself to look at the room again. It was filled with remnants of a horrific past, chains, shackles, and rusted tools that spoke of unspeakable torture. The walls bore the scars of a violence that had long since faded into memory, yet the echoes of pain lingered like a heavy fog. This was a chamber of horrors, a place where humanity had lost its way, and somehow it had claimed me as its next victim. I turned my attention to the door, willing it to open. "Let me out!" I yelled, the desperation in my voice now raw. I pressed my body against it, my heart racing as I heard a low, grating sound behind me. The whispers grew louder, turning into an urgent chant. I could feel their presence hovering at my back, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being judged, weighed against the horrors that had unfolded in this place. Then, without warning, the door swung open, revealing the dim light of the basement beyond. I stumbled forward, gasping as I escaped the suffocating grip of that room. I fell to my knees, feeling the cold concrete beneath me, and looked back over my shoulder. The door hung ajar, the whispers now a haunting lullaby echoing in my ears. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted back up the stairs, the shadows of the basement retreating behind me. I slammed the basement door shut, my heart pounding as I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The weight of what I had witnessed pressed down on me, a heavy cloak of dread that refused to lift. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had only scratched the surface of something much darker. But the horror didn't end there. The days that followed were clouded by a sense of unease. The house, which had once felt like a refuge, now seemed to pulse with the memories of its past. I could hear the whispers at night, a haunting melody that lulled me into a restless sleep, where shadows danced at the corners of my vision, and I felt their presence just out of reach. Each time I closed my eyes, I was transported back to that room, the cries of the forgotten ringing in my ears, their faces etched into my mind. I found myself drawn to the basement, unable to resist the pull of the shadows that lurked there. Every evening, I would stand at the top of the stairs, staring into the inky darkness, my mind battling between fear and the irresistible urge to uncover the truth. Finally, unable to endure the torment any longer, I decided to return. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and my trembling resolve, I crept back down the stairs. The air felt heavier this time, charged with an energy that sent chills down my spine. I hesitated at the door, my hand hovering above the doorknob as dread gnawed at my insides. What if I wasn't prepared for what lay beyond? I took a deep breath and turned the knob, stepping back into the darkness. The room awaited me, as if it had been anticipating my return. The whispers filled the air once more, a cacophony of longing and pain that echoed in the recesses of my mind. I felt their gaze upon me, the hollow eyes of the lost souls watching, waiting for me to uncover their secrets. But this time, I was determined. I scanned the room with my flashlight, illuminating the walls adorned with grotesque drawings and remnants of a past filled with agony. Each artifact told a story, and I needed to know. I had to know what had happened here. As I approached the center of the room, a cold breeze swept through, extinguishing my light. Darkness enveloped me, and I fumbled to turn it back on. In that brief moment of panic, I heard a voice, clear and unmistakable, calling my name. It was a whisper that cut through the silence like a knife, and I froze, fear coursing through my veins. I felt a jolt of terror at the sound of my name, spoken in that eerie, disembodied voice. The darkness felt alive, swirling around me like a living creature, and I instinctively took a step back, my breath hitching in my throat. The flashlight flickered back to life, its weak beam cutting through the oppressive gloom, revealing the room in fragments. I pointed the light toward the door, my only means of escape, but it had closed behind me, the air thickening with the weight of unspoken horrors. Panic surged through me again. What if I was trapped here forever? The thought echoed in my mind like a drumbeat, drowning out the whispers that still swirled around me. Please, I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. I didn't want to seem weak in front of them, but fear was a potent enemy, and I could feel it clawing at my sanity. What do you want from me? The air grew still, the whispers fading into an uncomfortable silence. I strained to hear anything, the sound of my heartbeat loud in my ears. Then, slowly, the shadows began to coalesce in front of me, forming the outlines of the lost souls I had glimpsed before. They hovered just beyond the reach of the flashlight's beam, their features still obscured by darkness. Help us, the voice came again, clearer this time, and I felt a compulsion to move closer. I didn't want to, but the need to understand was overpowering. I took a step forward, and they shifted in unison, their movements synchronizing like a grotesque dance. Who are you? I asked, my voice trembling. What happened here? As if in response, one of the figures stepped closer, the dim light catching a glimpse of a face, gaunt, hollow, and marked by scars of despair. It looked like a woman, her eyes sunken but filled with a desperate plea. My heart ached for her, and I took another cautious step forward. What do you need from me? The room seemed to pulse, and the woman's mouth moved, forming words that never reached my ears. It was as if they were caught in a void, trapped between realms, unable to convey their suffering. But I felt it, the weight of their anguish pressing down on me. I could sense their longing, their need to be seen, to be remembered. Tell me your story, I urged, my heart racing. Please. I want to help you. Suddenly, the air crackled with energy, and the figures recoiled as if I had touched a live wire. The room darkened further, and I stumbled back, my flashlight flickering ominously. I felt a sharp chill that stole my breath, and the shadows grew restless, swirling around me in a furious storm. Help us, they cried, their voices merging into a chilling chorus, echoing through the confines of my mind. I staggered, grappling with the realization that I was not just an observer, I was part of their narrative now, entwined in the threads of their pain. Stop! I shouted, my voice rising in desperation. I can't help if you don't show me. In response, a surge of energy rushed through the room, and I was suddenly engulfed in darkness. My flashlight went out again, plunging me into a void where I could hear nothing but the frantic beating of my heart. I felt the ground beneath me shift, and before I knew it, I was falling, a free fall into an abyss where the only certainty was the enveloping darkness. With a sudden jolt, I landed on a cold, hard surface. Dazed, I blinked against the blackness, and slowly, as if waking from a deep slumber, I began to see. Around me, shadows twisted and turned, morphing into images that played out before my eyes like a warped film reel. I was no longer in the basement. I found myself in a dimly lit room that pulsed with energy. I could see the figures more clearly now, an array of tormented souls trapped in a cycle of horror. Their faces shifted, one melding into another, as if they were sharing their collective story. In a flash, I was standing in the center of a grotesque tableau, a room filled with instruments of torture, much like the one in my basement. I could hear their cries, see the anguish etched into their faces, and my heart raced as I realized that I was witnessing the very events that had led them to this fate. Each scream, each drop of blood, and each plea for mercy played out in front of me, filling me with a sense of helplessness. I was a spectator to their torment, and I couldn't look away. The horror enveloped me like a shroud, wrapping tighter and tighter until I felt as though I could barely breathe. Suddenly, I was back in the basement, the room still swirling with shadows. I gasped for air, trying to steady myself. What just happened? I had been thrust into their memories, and I felt the weight of their pain heavy on my heart. I realized then that I was not just exploring a haunted place, I was a part of something far greater. I was a bridge between the living and the dead, and I had to find a way to help them or risk being consumed by the darkness that surrounded me. Determined to uncover the truth, I gathered my thoughts, pushing the terror down deep within me. My hands trembled as I reached for the flashlight, illuminating the walls once more. The whispers returned, swirling around me like a chilling wind, but this time they felt different, urgent and pleading rather than threatening. I needed answers. I turned back toward the door, my resolve strengthening as I faced the darkness. "I'm here to help you," I declared, my voice steadier than I felt. "Show me what happened. Let me understand." The shadows shifted in response, and the air thickened with an electric tension. One figure stepped forward, a man whose face bore the marks of anguish and sorrow. I could see now that he had once been a vibrant person, but the weight of his suffering had dulled his spirit. His eyes, though hollow, burned with a desperate need to be heard. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the rising chorus. "We are trapped. You must know the truth." As he spoke, the room around me shifted again, blurring the lines of reality. I was pulled into another vision, one that flooded my senses with sights and sounds of a distant past. I stood in a different version of the room, where vibrant colors replaced the decay. The walls were adorned with flickering candles and strange symbols, and the atmosphere hummed with a sense of foreboding. In the center of the room stood a man, tall and imposing, with an air of authority that made my skin crawl. He wielded a whip, and a group of terrified souls was bound at his feet, their faces a mixture of despair and pleading. My heart sank as I recognized one of them, the woman from the shadows. "Do you see?" The voice of the man echoed in my mind, piercing through the visions. "This is what we endured." The scene unfolded like a nightmare before my eyes. I watched as the man struck the victims, their cries echoing in my ears. I felt their pain, the agony resonating deep within my soul. I wanted to look away, but I was held captive by the truth of their suffering. I saw their lives being stripped away, their spirits crushed under the weight of cruelty and madness. Time blurred as the torturous moments stretched on, and I was overwhelmed by a wave of grief. I felt tears streaming down my cheeks, a physical manifestation of the sorrow that enveloped me. I was not just a witness, I was part of this story, intertwined with their fate. Suddenly, I was back in the basement, gasping for breath. The shadows loomed around me, the whispers now a cacophony of anguish. "Help us," they cried again, their voices desperate and raw. "What do you want me to do?" I shouted, my voice breaking under the weight of their pleas. "I can't change the past." The man stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "You must help us find peace. Break the cycle." As the shadows converged around me, I felt a rush of determination surge through my veins. I didn't know how I could help, but I knew I had to try. The faces of the lost souls haunted me, and I couldn't let their stories fade into oblivion. "Tell me how," I whispered, the sincerity in my voice resonating with the air around me. "I will do anything." The atmosphere shifted, the oppressive darkness retreating slightly, revealing a path lined with remnants of their torment, artifacts from a life once lived. The whispers grew softer, and I sensed a flicker of hope amid the despair. "We need to be remembered," the man urged. "You must tell our story." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the task ahead. "I will. I promise I will tell your story." With that declaration, the shadows began to recede, and the figures of the lost souls lingered at the edges of the light. Their faces softened, a glimmer of gratitude flickering in their hollow eyes. I could feel the weight of their suffering lifting, and for the first time, I felt a sense of connection, a bridge forged between the living and the dead. "Thank you," the man whispered, his voice barely a breath. "Now we can finally rest." As I stood in the basement, the air lightened, the atmosphere shifting into something less oppressive. The darkness began to dissipate, revealing the faded remnants of the room's past. I realized that I had taken the first step toward breaking the cycle of pain that had bound them for so long. But as I turned to leave, a lingering doubt clawed at the edges of my mind. What if their suffering was not truly over? What if the darkness still held sway over this house, ready to reclaim what it had lost? I ascended the staircase, my heart pounding as I stepped back into the familiar hallway of my home. The weight of the shadows lingered in my chest, but I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me. I would share their stories, breathe life into the memories that had been silenced for far too long. But as I reached the top of the stairs, I glanced back at the basement door, still ajar. A chill ran down my spine as I sensed something watching me from the shadows below. I could hear the whispers again, low and insistent, beckoning me back into the depths. In that moment, I realized the truth. I was not finished. The basement held secrets yet untold, and I had awakened something in myself that could not be ignored. I had become part of a narrative that extended far beyond my own life, a narrative woven with threads of anguish, loss, and the desperate quest for redemption. As I turned away from the door, I knew I would have to confront the darkness again. The basement had revealed its secrets, but it was only the beginning. I would delve deeper, uncover the past, and ultimately face whatever awaited me in the depths of that haunted place. In the days that followed, the weight of the basement's revelations lingered heavily in my mind. I found myself haunted by the lost souls and the darkness that had claimed them, unable to shake the feeling that I had merely scratched the surface of something far more sinister. I became consumed by a desire to learn more, to understand the history that bound them to this house and to free them from their torment. Every night, I felt the pull of the basement growing stronger, a magnetic force drawing me back into its depths. I spent hours researching the house's history, poring over dusty archives and fading newspaper clippings, hoping to unearth the truth. I learned that this place had once belonged to a wealthy family, known for their lavish parties and opulent lifestyle. But whispers of darkness clung to their legacy, a trail of tragedy and disappearance that stretched back decades. There were rumors of a hidden chamber beneath the basement, a place where the family's secrets were buried along with the echoes of their victims. I became obsessed, convinced that discovering this hidden space would offer the key to understanding the torment of the souls I had encountered. One evening, after another restless night, I gathered my courage and ventured back down the stairs, flashlight in hand. The air was thick with anticipation, charged with the energy of the past, and I felt a shiver of excitement mixed with fear. As I descended into the basement, the familiar whispers greeted me, but they felt different this time. There was an urgency in their tone, a sense that they were aware of my intentions and were urging me to uncover what lay hidden. I moved through the dimly lit room, searching for any sign of the fabled hidden chamber. With each passing moment, the darkness seemed to close in around me, enveloping me in its embrace. I felt the walls pulse with life, the whispers intensifying as if they were guiding me deeper into the shadows. I ran my fingers along the rough surfaces, feeling the texture of the past beneath my fingertips. Then, as I traced the contours of the wall, I noticed an irregularity, a slight indentation that felt out of place. Curiosity piqued, I pressed against it, and to my astonishment, a hidden door creaked open before me, revealing a narrow passageway that led deeper into the earth. A rush of cold air washed over me, and I hesitated at the threshold, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers surged around me, coaxing me forward, promising answers to the questions that had consumed my thoughts. I stepped through the doorway, and the air felt thicker, heavier. The narrow passageway was dimly lit, the walls damp and cold, and I could hear the faint sound of dripping water echoing in the distance. As I ventured further, the whispers transformed into a soft murmur, an almost melodic chant that resonated within me, urging me to move deeper into the darkness. After what felt like an eternity, I emerged into a cavernous room, illuminated by an otherworldly glow. The space was filled with strange symbols etched into the stone walls, and in the center stood a large altar, draped in tattered fabric that fluttered as if caught in an unseen breeze. As I approached the altar, I felt a powerful energy radiating from it, an ancient force that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. The whispers intensified, swirling around me, urging me to uncover the secrets hidden within this sacred space. I could feel their longing, their desperate need for release, and I was determined to help them. I reached out to touch the altar, and as my fingers grazed the fabric, a vision washed over me, a flood of images and emotions that felt both foreign and familiar. I saw the wealthy family that once inhabited this house, their laughter echoing through the halls. But then the scene shifted, and I witnessed the darker side of their legacy, the fear, the pain, the torment inflicted upon those who had crossed their path. I stumbled back, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of their suffering. I could feel the anger and despair of the souls trapped within the walls, their cries for help piercing through the layers of time. I realized that this altar was not just a relic of the past, it was a focal point of the darkness that had claimed so many lives. But before I could process the enormity of what I had discovered, the air crackled with energy and the shadows in the room began to twist and shift. A figure emerged from the darkness, its form coalescing into something more solid. I gasped, heart racing as I recognized the man from my visions, the tormentor who had wielded power over the lost souls. "Why have you come here?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the chamber like thunder. The air thickened with tension, and I felt an overwhelming wave of fear wash over me. I'm here to help them," I stammered, taking a cautious step back. "I want to set them free." He laughed, a cold, mirthless sound that sent chills down my spine. "Help? You think you can save them? They are bound to this place, just as you will be if you don't leave now." As he spoke, the shadows around me surged, a dark tide threatening to pull me under. I could feel the weight of despair pressing in on all sides, and I fought against the panic rising within me. "No, I won't let you take them." "Foolish girl," he spat, stepping closer, his eyes blazing with malice. "You cannot fight the darkness. It is a part of you now." With a surge of adrenaline, I turned to flee, racing back through the narrow passageway, the whispers echoing in my ears, a blend of encouragement and warning. The darkness surged behind me, an angry wave threatening to consume me whole. I stumbled up the stairs, bursting through the basement door and slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against it, gasping for breath, my heart racing as I tried to process what I had just witnessed. The reality of the tormentor's presence lingered in my mind, and I realized I had crossed a line I could never uncross. But despite the fear that gripped me, I knew I couldn't turn away now. I had glimpsed the truth, and I had a responsibility to those lost souls. I had to find a way to confront the darkness that still held sway over the house. As I stood in the dim light of the hallway, the echoes of the past still swirling in my mind, I resolved to uncover the secrets of this place, no matter the cost. I would find a way to free the souls trapped within these walls, even if it meant facing the darkness head-on. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of the basement and the tormentor I had encountered. The chilling laughter echoed in my ears, a reminder that I had stumbled into something far beyond my understanding. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was now part of a larger story, one woven with darkness and despair, yet also intertwined with the possibility of redemption. Determined to uncover more about the house's history, I spent the next few days delving deeper into the research. I visited local libraries, scoured online archives, and even sought out old residents who had lived near the house. Each piece of information I uncovered seemed to lead me closer to the truth, but it also deepened my sense of dread. I learned that the family who once lived here had been rumored to dabble in the occult. They held secret gatherings, cloaked in mystery and whispers of dark rituals that took place within the confines of the basement. Disappearances were common among those who crossed their paths, and it was said that their souls remained tethered to the house, trapped by the very darkness they had unleashed. As I pieced together the fragments of their story, I began to realize that I was not the first to seek answers in this place. There had been others, individuals drawn to the house, each seeking their own truths. Some had entered the basement, only to vanish without a trace. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but it also ignited a fire within me. I could not be another victim. I had to be the one to break the cycle. One evening, armed with my newfound knowledge and a determination that burned deep within me, I descended into the basement once more. The shadows greeted me like old friends, but I felt different this time, stronger, more resolved. I had to confront the darkness, to stand my ground and demand answers. As I approached the altar, I felt the energy in the room shift, thickening with tension. The whispers swirled around me, filling the space with a cacophony of voices. I could sense their anticipation, their hope that I would succeed where others had failed. "Show me what I need to see," I whispered, placing my hands on the altar. I closed my eyes, willing myself to connect with the energy that pulsed beneath my fingertips. Images flooded my mind, the faces of those who had suffered, the tormentor lurking in the shadows, and the dark rituals that had bound their souls to this place. Suddenly, the altar began to tremble beneath my hands, and a wave of energy surged through me, lifting me off the ground. I gasped as I was transported into another vision, a powerful wave that swept me back in time to the very moment the darkness had taken hold. I found myself standing in the same basement, but it was transformed. The walls were adorned with grotesque symbols, and the air was thick with anticipation. A group of hooded figures gathered around the altar, their voices the low chant that resonated in my bones. At the center stood the tormentor, his eyes gleaming with malevolence. I watched in horror as the figures brought forth a young girl, her eyes wide with terror. She was bound, a sacrificial offering to the darkness that lingered in the air. My heart ached as I realized this was not just a ritual, it was a testament to the cruelty that had haunted this place for generations. As the chant grew louder, I felt the energy shift around me. The girl's cries echoed in my mind, a desperate plea for help that reverberated through the ages. "Please, someone help me," she screamed, her voice piercing through the veil of time. In that moment, I knew I had to act. I was not just a passive observer, I had a chance to intervene. I reached out, willing the darkness to recede. "You will not take her," I shouted, my voice strong and defiant. I refused to let this happen. The shadows twisted and writhed, responding to my declaration. The hooded figures turned, their eyes widening in shock as they sensed my presence. The tormentor glared at me, his face contorting with rage. "You dare to interfere?" he bellowed, the ground shaking beneath us. "I do," I declared, my heart pounding in my chest. "I will not let you continue this cycle of pain." The energy around me surged, a whirlwind of power that pushed back against the darkness. The walls of the basement trembled as I felt the spirits of the lost souls rallying behind me, their voices rising in a chorus of support. The girl looked at me, her eyes filled with hope, and for the first time, I felt a connection that transcended time. With a final surge of determination, I focused on the altar, channeling all my strength into the vision. "You are not their master," I shouted, and the energy exploded outward, shattering the confines of the ritual. The shadows roared in protest, twisting and contorting as the altar cracked, splintering beneath the force of my will. The hooded figures screamed, their forms dissolving into the darkness as the power I unleashed flooded the room. In that moment, I saw the girl break free from her bonds, a radiant light enveloping her. The spirits of the lost souls emerged, their faces brightening with relief as they rushed toward the light, their shackles falling away. But just as victory seemed within reach, the tormentor lunged at me, his hands outstretched, the darkness swirling around him like a storm. "You will pay for this," he hissed, the shadows coiling around his form. Just as his fingers brushed my skin, the room exploded with light, and I felt a surge of warmth engulf me. I was thrust backward, my vision blurring as the basement faded from view. The whispers grew distant, replaced by an overwhelming sense of calm. When I finally opened my eyes, I found myself back in my bedroom, gasping for breath. The weight of the experience clung to me, a mixture of relief and dread. Had I succeeded? Had I truly set them free? I sat up, heart racing, the memories of the vision still vivid in my mind. I realized that I had a choice to make. I could walk away, leave the past buried in the shadows, or I could confront the darkness head-on and ensure that it would never claim another victim. As I stared out the window, the dawn light creeping into my room, I made my decision. I would return to the basement, confront the tormentor, and finish what I had started. This time, I would be ready. The sun rose with a soft glow, casting golden rays across my room, but the warmth did little to chase away the cold grip of dread in my chest. I felt the pull of the basement more than ever, the promise of answers and the lingering threat of the tormentor beckoning me back. I dressed quickly, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had witnessed and what lay ahead. I was determined to face the darkness that had haunted the house for far too long. I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. The spirits trapped within deserved freedom, and I was their only hope. As I descended the stairs, each step echoed with the weight of my resolve. The basement door loomed before me, a gateway to the unknown. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and pushed it open. The familiar chill enveloped me, but this time I felt different, more empowered, less afraid. I was ready to confront whatever awaited me in the depths. The basement felt alive, pulsating with energy as I stepped inside. The whispers swirled around me, their tones now a blend of fear and anticipation. I moved purposefully toward the altar, feeling the coolness of the stone beneath my fingers as I approached. The remnants of my previous vision lingered in my mind, a potent reminder of the stakes involved. I took a moment to center myself, focusing on my breathing. "I'm here," I spoke softly, but my voice echoed with a strength I hadn't felt before. "I will not let you continue this cycle of torment. I will confront you." As I spoke, the shadows around me began to shift, coalescing into a familiar shape, the tormentor. His presence was a cold gust of wind, chilling the air and sending shivers down my spine. His eyes glinted with malice, and I could feel the darkness radiating from him like a storm waiting to break. "You return," he hissed, his voice a low growl that reverberated through the room. "Foolish girl. You think you can change anything?" "I will change everything," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. You can't keep them bound to this place. I know what you've done, and it ends now. He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the basement. You think you know? You are but a child playing with forces beyond your comprehension. But I could feel the strength of the spirits behind me, their whispers rising in a crescendo of support. I am not alone, I said, drawing strength from their presence. I carry their pain, their anger, and their hope. You will not silence them any longer. With a flick of his wrist, the shadows surged forward, twisting around me like tendrils seeking to ensnare me. I braced myself, feeling the pressure of the darkness closing in, but I stood my ground. I will not be afraid. Channeling the energy of the lost souls, I reached deep within myself and unleashed a surge of light, a brilliant beam that pierced through the shadows. The darkness recoiled, and the tormentor stumbled back, a snarl twisting his features. You cannot hope to wield that power, he roared, summoning the shadows once more. But this time, I was ready. I focused on the light, letting it expand, illuminating the room and pushing back against the encroaching darkness. As the light spread, I saw the faces of the lost souls emerge from the shadows, their expressions filled with hope and determination. Together, we were stronger than he could ever comprehend. The tormentor's eyes widened with fear, and I could feel the shift in the energy around us. No! This cannot be, he screamed, his voice laced with rage. With one final push, I directed the light toward him, enveloping him in its brilliance. He writhed against it, shadows dissipating around him, and for a brief moment, I saw the fear in his eyes, the vulnerability that lay beneath the facade of power. Your reign of terror is over, I shouted, my voice rising above the chaos. The light intensified, swirling around him like a cyclone, and I felt the energy of the spirits surge, their cries echoing in my heart. Suddenly, the basement shook violently, the very foundation of the house trembling beneath us. The altar cracked, and the symbols on the walls glowed brightly, illuminating the darkness that had consumed this place for so long. In that moment of upheaval, the tormentor lunged at me, but I was prepared. I raised my hands, channeling every ounce of strength and light within me. You will be cast out, I declared, and with a final surge, I pushed the light toward him, consuming him in its brilliance. His anguished scream echoed through the basement as he was engulfed, shadows swirling and spiraling into nothingness. I felt the energy around me shift, a release of tension that flooded the room. The whispers of the spirits grew louder, transforming from cries of despair to shouts of victory. As the darkness dissipated, I fell to my knees, breathless and trembling. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive weight that had lingered for so long began to lift. I had done it. I had confronted the tormentor and freed the souls that had been trapped in this place for far too long. But just as relief washed over me, a flicker of uncertainty crept into my mind. Had I truly banished him, or had I merely postponed the inevitable? The question gnawed at me as I sat in the fading light of the basement, surrounded by the remnants of what had once been a prison of shadows. As the whispers of the lost souls enveloped me, I realized that the journey was not yet over. While I had confronted the darkness, the impact of what had happened lingered within me. I could feel the echoes of their pain, their stories, and the weight of my own survival. But I also felt a sense of purpose, a renewed determination to honor their memories and ensure that the darkness would never return. The battle had been fought, but the war against the shadows would continue, and I would be ready to face whatever came next. As I knelt on the cold, stone floor of the basement, I took a moment to breathe and process what had just happened. The remnants of darkness swirled around me like a distant memory, and the air began to clear. I felt the presence of the spirits around me, their energy palpable, like a warm embrace after a long, cold night. It was a strange comfort amidst the chaos that had just unfolded. With shaking hands, I brushed away the dust from the altar, my heart racing as I contemplated the significance of what I had done. I had faced the tormentor, and in that confrontation, I had not only liberated the souls trapped in this house, but also confronted my own fears. But victory often comes with a cost. A dark shadow lingered in the recesses of my mind, a fear that what I had encountered was merely a fragment of something much larger, something that might still lurk in the corners of the world, waiting for the opportunity to strike again. I stood slowly, the echoes of their victory still vibrating in the air around me. "Thank you," I whispered to the spirits, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude for their presence. Their whispers turned soft, almost melodic, wrapping around me like a soothing blanket. As I turned to leave the basement, I felt a slight shift in the atmosphere. The door, which had previously felt like a barrier, now opened with ease. I took one last glance back at the altar, knowing that while I had conquered the immediate threat, the echoes of the past would remain forever intertwined with my life. Emerging into the light of the day, I took a deep breath, the fresh air filling my lungs. But the moment was bittersweet. Although I had triumphed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the fight against the darkness was far from over. I needed to know more. Over the next few days, I dedicated myself to researching the history of the house, determined to learn everything I could about the tormentor, the family who had lived there, and the events that had unfolded in that basement. I pored over old newspapers, diaries, and anything I could find that connected me to the past. I learned that the family who had lived in my house had faced tragedy after tragedy, disappearances, madness, and inexplicable deaths. Each new detail added weight to the lingering questions in my mind. Why had the family been drawn to such darkness? Had they willingly participated in the rituals, or had they been victims of a malevolent force? During my research, I discovered a journal belonging to the family's youngest daughter, a girl not much older than I was. Her entries were filled with descriptions of strange occurrences, visions of shadows flitting past her window, and the whispers that echoed in the halls. As I read her words, a chill ran down my spine. Her experiences mirrored my own. It was as if she had been warning me of the very darkness I had just faced. In one of her entries, she wrote, "I can feel them watching. They want something from me. I don't know what it is, but it's not good. If anyone finds this, please know that I tried to escape, but the darkness won." Her final entry was scrawled hastily, the ink running as if she had been in a hurry to finish. "I can hear them calling my name. They won't let me go." The weight of her words sat heavily on my heart. It dawned on me that her spirit was likely one of the many who had been trapped in the basement. I felt a surge of responsibility to honor her memory and ensure that her story was not forgotten. Driven by a newfound sense of purpose, I decided to return to the basement one last time to pay my respects to the souls who had suffered there. Armed with candles and a small bouquet of flowers, I descended the stairs once more. This time, I felt a deep sense of reverence for the place that had once been a prison of shadows. As I arranged the flowers on the altar, I whispered a prayer for the lost souls and for the girl who had endured so much. "You are not forgotten," I vowed, the flickering candlelight casting gentle shadows across the walls. "I will tell your story, and I will make sure no one else suffers as you did." As I lit the candles, a warmth enveloped the room, and I felt the energy shift once more. The shadows seemed to retreat, leaving behind a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. I could sense the spirits gathering, their gratitude palpable as they surrounded me. "Thank you," a voice whispered, soft and ethereal. I turned, searching the shadows for the source, but all I found was the flickering candlelight. We are free now. Tears filled my eyes as I closed my own, letting the moment wash over me. I could feel their presence, a comforting embrace that soothed my soul. I had faced the tormentor, and while I had emerged victorious, the journey was not truly over. As I prepared to leave, I felt a chill wash over me, a sudden awareness that the darkness was not entirely gone. There was a lingering threat, a reminder that the shadows could return. But now, I felt stronger, armed with knowledge, support, and a resolve to fight back. As I ascended the stairs, I could still hear the echoes of the spirits, their whispers fading into the light. I vowed to carry their stories with me, to become their voice in a world that had long forgotten their pain. With each step, I knew I was no longer just a survivor, I was a protector, a guardian of the light. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I would face them with courage, ready to confront whatever darkness lay ahead. Days turned into weeks as I navigated my new reality. The weight of the spirit stories pressed heavily on my shoulders, but I felt an undeniable strength from my victory in the basement. I was not just a resident of this house anymore, I was its protector, its keeper of secrets. Yet, with each passing day, I sensed a strange shift in the atmosphere around me. Despite the triumph I had felt after confronting the tormentor, a persistent unease began to creep back into my life. At night, shadows danced in the corners of my room, and the soft whispers that once felt comforting now carried a sense of urgency. They were warnings, echoes of the past seeking to remind me of unfinished business. One night, unable to shake the feeling of dread, I pulled out the journal of the young girl who had once lived in the house. I hoped her words would provide clarity. As I flipped through the yellowed pages, one entry caught my eye. It was different from the rest, hastily scrawled and nearly illegible, as if written in a moment of desperation. The shadows are growing stronger. They want me to join them, to take my place in their darkness. I can feel their pull, their whispers calling me home. I must resist, but it's getting harder. Please, if you find this, don't let them take you too. A chill ran down my spine. Her words echoed my own fears. I had confronted the tormentor, yet the shadows had not truly been vanquished. They were still lurking, biding their time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I felt a gnawing anxiety as I realized that the young girl's fight had not ended, and perhaps mine hadn't either. The next day, I decided to reach out to the local historian who specialized in the town's dark past. I needed more information, something that could help me understand the nature of the shadows and their connection to the house. The town library was a labyrinth of dust and forgotten stories, but I knew it held the key to my questions. The historian was a middle-aged woman named Clara, with kind eyes that seemed to pierce through the veil of time. After I explained my situation, her expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "You're not the first to feel the presence of the shadows in that house," she said, her voice low. "It has a history of darkness that runs deep." Clara shared stories of previous owners who had experienced inexplicable events, disappearances, madness, and eerie occurrences that drove them away. "The shadows are drawn to the pain and suffering of the past," she explained. "They feed on fear and grief. The young girl you mentioned, she was one of the many who suffered in that house. It's said that her spirit is still searching for a way to break free." "What do I need to do?" I asked, urgency creeping into my voice. "How can I help her and the others?" Clara leaned in closer, her tone grave. "To truly free the spirits, you must confront the source of their pain. You need to uncover the truth behind the rituals that took place in your basement. There's a chance the tormentor wasn't acting alone. A chill swept through me at the implication. The tormentor had been just a puppet in a much darker game, and I had to dig deeper into the history of the house and the family who had lived there. Armed with newfound determination, I spent the next few days combing through old records and documents, piecing together the puzzle of the family's past. I discovered references to a cult that had operated in the area, a group that believed in harnessing dark energies for power. The family had been involved, willingly or not, and their descent into madness had been tied to the rituals they practiced. One evening, as I sorted through the final pieces of the puzzle, a wave of nausea washed over me. The whispers returned, louder and more urgent than ever before. I felt their pull, their desperate cries weaving into a single coherent plea, "Help us." It was time to return to the basement, to confront not just the shadows but the truth that lay buried within its depths. I gathered my supplies, candles, offerings, and the journal, and descended once more into the familiar cold embrace of the basement. As I entered, the air felt thicker, charged with energy. The altar stood before me, a reminder of the power that had once thrived here. I arranged the candles around the altar, their flickering flames casting long shadows that danced on the stone walls. "Spirits of the past," I called out, my voice steady despite the anxiety swirling in my gut. "I come to honor your suffering and to seek the truth. Help me understand what happened here." As if in response, the temperature dropped and the whispers swirled around me. I closed my eyes, focusing on the energy pulsating through the room. I could feel the spirits gathering, their presence growing stronger as the shadows flickered and writhed. Suddenly, a vision engulfed me, images flooding my mind like a torrent. I saw the family gathered in the basement, their faces twisted in fear and desperation. The rituals they performed were not for power but for protection against something far darker. The tormentor was not the true enemy. He was a tool of a greater evil, a force that sought to consume them all. The vision shifted, and I was transported to a night long ago, a night when the shadows had first taken root in the house. I felt the terror that gripped the family as they performed their final ritual, the anguish of the young girl as she was torn from her loved ones. Then, I saw the source of the darkness, a swirling mass of shadows, hungry and malevolent, drawn to the pain and fear that permeated the air. They fed on despair, consuming everything in their path, leaving only emptiness behind. With a gasp, I pulled away from the vision, the truth settling heavily in my heart. I understood now. To free the spirits, I would have to confront this greater evil, to face the very source of the darkness that had plagued the house for generations. As the whispers faded, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The spirits had given me the knowledge I needed, and now I had to gather my strength for the battle ahead. I couldn't allow the shadows to continue their reign of terror. "Together, we will end this," I vowed, feeling their presence envelop me in support. "We will find a way to banish the darkness once and for all." As I left the basement, determination coursed through my veins. The fight was far from over, and the final confrontation awaited. But now, I was not alone. The spirits of the past were with me, and I would do everything in my power to ensure that their stories were finally set free. The night arrived like a suffocating shroud, heavy with anticipation. I knew that the final confrontation with the darkness awaited me. Armed with knowledge and the spirits of the past at my back, I felt ready to face the shadows that had haunted this house for so long. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the rooms, I prepared myself for the battle ahead. I gathered the candles, the journal, and the offerings I had collected, a few personal items belonging to the spirits. I felt an unyielding sense of purpose, but beneath it lurked a gnawing fear. What if I failed? What if I couldn't banish the darkness once and for all? I descended into the basement, each step echoing ominously in the stillness. The air felt charged, thick with the energy of those who had come before me. I lit the candles, their warm glow flickering against the cold stone walls, casting an ethereal light across the altar. Spirits of the past, I called out, my voice steady despite the tremors in my heart. I seek your guidance. Help me to confront the darkness that has taken you from this world. The whispers swirled around me, growing louder and more insistent. I felt their presence envelop me, and I closed my eyes, allowing their energy to flow through me. The shadows in the corners of the room flickered and twisted, as if waiting for my next move. In that moment, I understood that the darkness would not simply relent. It thrived on fear and despair, feeding off the anguish of its victims. I needed to confront it with courage and resolve. Taking a deep breath, I called forth the energy of the spirits. We stand united against the darkness. We will not be silenced or consumed. My voice rang out, echoing in the cavernous basement. The shadows stirred, coiling and writhing like smoke in the air. I could feel the malevolent force pushing back, testing my resolve. I placed my hands on the altar, grounding myself as I concentrated on the light emanating from the candles. By the light of those who came before me, I declared, I call upon you to join me in this fight. Spirits of the lost, lend me your strength. The candles flared brighter, illuminating the room with a warm glow. I felt the spirits gathering around me, their energy surging through me like a tidal wave. The darkness shrieked, a cacophony of anguish and rage, but I stood firm. Suddenly, the shadows lunged toward me, a swirling mass of despair and rage. I focused on the light, envisioning it pushing back against the darkness, illuminating the corners of the basement that had long been shrouded in fear. With a surge of determination, I shouted, "You will not take me. I will not let you consume me or the souls you have trapped here." The shadows hesitated for a moment, as if recoiling from my defiance. The whispers of the spirits grew louder, a chorus of support ringing in my ears. I closed my eyes, visualizing the light growing stronger, expanding outwards to envelop the darkness. "Leave this place," I commanded, my voice resonating with the strength of the spirits beside me. "You have no power here. Your reign of terror ends now." The shadows surged forward, but the light pushed back harder. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down, but I refused to yield. The candles flickered violently as the energy in the room intensified, the battle between light and shadow reaching its peak. As the light expanded, I glimpsed the forms of the spirits swirling within it, faces contorted in pain and suffering, but now filled with hope. I reached out to them, urging them to lend their strength, to join me in this final act of defiance. "Together," I shouted. "Together, we are stronger." The spirits surged forward, their energy merging with mine, creating a brilliant beam of light that pierced the darkness. The shadows shrieked, a terrible sound that echoed in my bones as the light pushed back harder, forcing the darkness to retreat. With one final push, I raised my arms, the energy coalescing into a blinding light that engulfed the basement. The shadows shrieked one last time before disintegrating into nothingness, swallowed by the brilliance of the spirit's light. The basement fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the last remnants of darkness faded away. I stood panting, the light around me fading to a warm glow. The spirits had been freed, their pain finally lifted, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. I dropped to my knees, tears streaming down my cheeks as I absorbed the gravity of what had just happened. The weight of their suffering had been lifted, and in their release, I felt a profound connection to them, a bond forged in battle. "Thank you," I whispered, my heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for fighting alongside me. In that moment, I felt their presence enveloping me, a gentle warmth that filled the space where shadows had once thrived. The whispers of gratitude echoed softly, like a soothing lullaby, and I knew that they had finally found peace. As I ascended the stairs, the basement behind me now felt like a sanctuary rather than a prison. The house was still standing, but its energy had shifted. It was no longer a vessel for despair, but a home filled with light. Though the memories of the past would linger, they would no longer haunt me. I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, no longer just a survivor, but a guardian of those who had suffered. As I stood outside under the vast, starry sky, I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill my lungs. The journey had changed me, and I knew that I would carry the stories of the lost with me forever. I would honor their memory, ensuring that they were never forgotten. And while the shadows may return in other forms, I felt a deep-seated confidence that I could face whatever darkness lay ahead. I was not alone. I had the spirits of the past, the strength of their stories, and the light that would forever guide me. The echoes of the past may fade, but the bonds we forged in battle would remain, a testament to the enduring power of hope in the face of despair. A look in the mirror. I still remember the first night in our new home. The air was thick with the scent of fresh paint, and the creaking of the old floorboards underfoot sounded like whispers of the past. I had been excited about the move, a new beginning, a chance to escape the memories that lingered in the shadows of our old place. But as I stood there, staring into the antique mirror hung in the hallway, a chill crept down my spine. "Are you sure about this?" I had asked myself when we first decided to buy the house. My husband, Tom, had reassured me. "It's just a bit old. We'll fix it up." I should have listened to the unease gnawing at my gut. There was something unsettling about that mirror, something that made me question the reflection staring back at me. The first few days passed in a blur of unpacking boxes and arranging furniture. I tried to focus on the mundane, but each time I walked past that mirror, it beckoned me with an air of mystery. It wasn't just its ornate frame or the way it caught the light at angles. It felt like it was alive, watching, waiting. I found myself drawn to it in quiet moments, gazing into its depths as if I could uncover its secrets. I would stand there, lost in thought, sometimes catching glimpses of movement behind me. A flicker of a shadow, a whisper of a voice. I brushed it off as my imagination, the remnants of a busy mind adjusting to a new environment. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, I stood before the mirror once again. This time, however, the reflection wasn't quite right. My image wavered, as if it were underwater. I blinked, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling, but the air in the room felt thick, charged with something I couldn't quite put my finger on. "Tom, come here," I called, my voice echoing slightly in the stillness. I needed him to see what I was seeing, to reassure me that I wasn't losing my mind. He entered the hallway, a curious expression on his face. "What's up?" he asked, glancing at the mirror. "Look. There's something strange." I pointed, my finger trembling slightly. But as he stepped closer, the reflection settled, revealing only the two of us standing there. "It's just an old mirror, Anna," he said with a chuckle, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You're just tired. We've been working non-stop." Maybe he was right. Perhaps it was just exhaustion. But as I turned away, I felt the mirror's gaze follow me, a lingering presence that sent a shiver down my spine. That night, sleep came fitfully. I tossed and turned, dreams swirling with shadows and half-formed figures. I woke several times, heart racing, as I felt something lurking in the darkness. Each time, I glanced toward the mirror, expecting to see something staring back, something that shouldn't be there. But it remained blank, a simple reflection of my bedroom. Days turned into weeks, and the mirror became a fixture of my daily life. I would often find myself drawn to it, staring into its depths, searching for something I couldn't quite identify. Tom dismissed my concerns, insisting that I was overthinking things. But I felt it, a growing sense of unease, a gnawing fear that whispered to me while I was alone. It wasn't long before the first odd occurrences began. It started with small things, items misplaced, sounds echoing in the house when no one else was there. I would find my keys in strange places or hear faint laughter in the distance. Each time I asked Tom about it, he would brush it off, suggesting I was just losing track of my belongings or imagining things. But one evening, as I prepared dinner, the atmosphere shifted. The light in the kitchen dimmed, and the air turned heavy. I felt a presence lurking behind me. The hairs on my arms stood on end, and I turned instinctively, only to find nothing there. A soft voice drifted through the room, faint yet clear, calling my name. Anna. It was a whisper that sent chills through my entire being. I spun back to the mirror, and for a brief moment, I saw a figure standing behind me, an outline of a woman, her features obscured. My breath caught in my throat as I stumbled back, slamming into the countertop. Tom! I screamed, panic rising. He rushed in, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" he asked, scanning the room. "What happened?" "There was someone in the mirror," I stammered, pointing wildly at the glass. But as I looked again, there was nothing but my reflection staring back at me, wide-eyed and terrified. "It's just a trick of the light," he said, his voice steady but laced with worry. "You need to take a break. You're under a lot of stress." Stress. That's what he thought it was. But I knew better. I felt it. Something dark was seeping into our lives, something that had taken root in this house, and it was only a matter of time before it revealed itself fully. As the days dragged on, I couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror was a gateway to something far more sinister. It wasn't just an antique, it was a portal to another realm, one that thrived on fear and despair. I couldn't ignore the sense of impending doom that wrapped around me like a shroud. Then, one stormy night, as lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room in brief bursts of light, I stood before the mirror once more. My heart raced, a primal instinct urging me to flee, yet I was unable to look away. The glass shimmered, and as I peered deeper, I saw something shift, a scene unfolding behind the surface. It was an alternative reality, one where everything I held dear was twisted and wrong. I watched, horrified, as a version of myself stumbled through a darkened corridor, pursued by shadows that clung to her like fog. "Anna," the voice echoed again, low and haunting, seeping into my bones. I staggered back, breathless, terror clawing at my insides. I realized then that this wasn't just a reflection, it was a glimpse into a world filled with horrors I couldn't comprehend. I needed to get out of that house, away from the mirror. But as I turned to leave, I felt the pull of the glass, a magnetic force drawing me closer. "Stay," it seemed to whisper, enticing and sinister all at once. But the walls of my reality were closing in, and I knew I had to escape before it was too late. The true nightmare was just beginning, and I could feel its breath on my neck. Panic surged through me as I stumbled back from the mirror, the echoes of that soft, sinister voice lingering in my mind. My pulse quickened, and I could feel the walls closing in, as if the house itself was conspiring against me. I darted down the hallway, desperate to put distance between myself and the mirror, but the shadows seemed to stretch, clawing at my back, urging me to return. I found myself in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, trying to catch my breath. Tom was in the living room, oblivious to my growing dread. I wanted to confide in him, to share the haunting images and whispers that plagued me, but fear held my tongue. What if he dismissed my fears again? What if he thought I was losing my grip on reality? The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows as thunder rumbled ominously. I glanced back toward the hallway, my heart racing as I fought the urge to run. Instead, I grabbed my phone and dialed the one person I thought might understand, Sarah, my closest friend since childhood. She had always been attuned to the strange and unexplainable, often sharing her own eerie encounters. "Anna? Is everything okay?" Her voice crackled through the line, concern lacing her words. "No, I don't know how to explain it," I stammered, glancing around the dimly lit kitchen as if the shadows were listening. "There's something wrong with this house. Something wrong with the mirror." "Have you seen anything?" she asked, her tone shifting, now filled with intrigue. It shows things, Sarah. Things I can't explain. I think it's connected to another reality," I whispered, a shiver running down my spine. "I feel like it's watching me." "Sounds like you need to get out of there, Anna. Have you talked to Tom about this?" "Not yet. He thinks I'm overreacting," I admitted, the weight of my fears crashing down. "Maybe I can come over? We can figure this out together," she suggested, her voice soothing yet firm. "Yes, please. I need someone here," I replied, relief washing over me. But as I hung up, a sense of dread settled in my stomach. What if Sarah saw something too? What if the mirror reached out to her as well? The hours dragged on, and I busied myself in the kitchen, trying to distract myself from the overwhelming sense of dread that lingered. I cleaned and organized, but every creak of the house made my heart race. I could still hear that voice echoing in my mind, and the images from the mirror haunted me. When Sarah finally arrived, the storm had passed, leaving a thick silence in its wake. She stepped inside, her face lighting up with a smile. "Hey. It's good to see you," she said, but her smile faltered as she noticed my pale complexion. "Are you all right?" I nodded, but my heart was still racing. "I'm glad you're here. I need your help." "Okay, let's talk." "What's going on?" she asked, leading me to the living room. I hesitated, glancing toward the hallway where the mirror loomed ominously. "I don't know how to explain it, but I keep seeing things in that mirror. It feels alive," I confessed, my voice trembling. "Alive?" she echoed, a hint of skepticism in her tone. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, recalling the unsettling images I had witnessed. I saw another version of myself. She was trapped, and there were shadows chasing her. It felt so real, like I was watching her life unfold. Sarah studied me for a moment, her brow furrowing. "Maybe it's just your mind playing tricks on you. You've been under a lot of stress with the move." "No, it's more than that," I insisted, a knot tightening in my stomach. I felt a presence in the room. I can't shake this feeling that something is wrong with that mirror. She looked hesitant but finally nodded. "All right, let's take a look." My heart raced as I led her toward the hallway, dread gnawing at me with each step. I could feel the mirror's pull, a magnetic force that drew me closer, and I hated that I was afraid. It was just a mirror, wasn't it? As we approached, the air grew heavy, charged with an unnameable energy. I hesitated at the threshold, and Sarah glanced at me, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "You're sure about this?" "No, but I have to know," I replied, steeling myself. We stepped into the dim hallway, and I pointed to the mirror. "There it is." Sarah leaned closer, examining the glass with a furrowed brow. "It looks normal to me," she said, glancing back at me. "Are you sure you're not just seeing things?" Before I could respond, the mirror shimmered, and for a split second, I thought I saw movement, a shadow flitting across the surface. My breath caught in my throat. "Did you see that?" I gasped, clutching Sarah's arm. "See what?" she asked, bewildered. The reflection, there was something there. But the mirror remained still, reflecting our confused expressions. Sarah's brow furrowed in concern. "Hannah, you're scaring me. Maybe we should just step back." "No, I have to look," I insisted, my voice rising in panic. I leaned closer, searching the depths of the glass, and as I did, a cold wind swept through the hallway, sending chills racing down my spine. Suddenly, I saw it again, an image flickering within the glass. The other version of myself, pale and frantic, was trapped in a nightmarish landscape, her eyes wide with fear. I could feel her desperation as if it were my own. "Hannah, step back," Sarah shouted, her voice breaking through my trance. I stumbled back, shaking my head, trying to clear the images flooding my mind. "We need to leave," I said, my voice trembling. As we turned to leave, the lights flickered, and the air grew heavy with an oppressive force. I could feel something rising behind us, a presence that seemed to reach out with icy fingers, and the shadows in the room darkened, swirling as if alive. "Hannah, run!" Sarah shouted, and we both dashed down the hallway, my heart racing with terror. I could hear whispers echoing around us, growing louder, more insistent. "Stay, stay," they called, a chorus of voices beckoning us back. We burst into the living room, breathless and wide-eyed. I glanced back toward the hallway, the mirror looming like a dark portal, pulsating with an unseen energy. "What the hell was that?" Sarah panted, her face pale. "I don't know," I replied, panic rising. "But we can't go near it again." We stood in silence, the weight of what we had just witnessed pressing heavily upon us. I could still hear those whispers, the chilling promise of something waiting beyond the glass. "We need to get out of this house," Sarah said firmly, her expression grave. "Tonight." But as I looked back toward the hallway, I knew it was already too late. The mirror had awakened something, and whatever it was hungry for fear. The night wore on, thick with tension, as Sarah and I sat huddled in the living room. I could feel the weight of the mirror's presence lurking just beyond the hallway, its surface still reflecting the dim light from the room but somehow radiating a foreboding energy. The shadows danced in the corners, growing longer, as if they were eager to escape the confines of the glass. "Do you think it's just a trick of the light?" Sarah asked, trying to sound hopeful, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her unease. "No, it's something more," I replied, my heart still racing. "It's like the mirror is a gateway to something dark and terrible." We both jumped as a loud clap of thunder echoed outside, rattling the windows. The storm had returned, and the rain lashed against the glass, creating a symphony of chaos that matched the turmoil in my mind. I glanced toward the hallway, half expecting the whispers to return, but the silence was deafening. "What if we covered it up?" Sarah suggested. "Maybe it will stop, whatever is happening." The idea resonated with me, and I nodded vigorously. Yes. We can't let it control us. If it's just a mirror, we need to treat it like one. We gathered blankets and sheets, our hands shaking as we approached the mirror. My heart pounded in my chest, a primal instinct urging me to run, but I pushed it aside. This was our home now, and I refused to let fear dictate my life. As I draped a sheet over the mirror, a shiver coursed through me. The moment the fabric made contact with the glass, a surge of energy pulsed through the air, and the whispers returned, faint but insistent, filling the room with an eerie harmony. "Anna," they called, a chilling sound that sent goosebumps racing along my arms. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, fear tightening around my throat. "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "What is happening?" The atmosphere shifted, thickening with palpable dread as the whispers intensified, weaving together in a sinister song that seemed to beckon us closer. "Maybe we should leave now," I suggested, my voice trembling. "Let's just get out of here." "No, we can't leave until we figure this out," Sarah insisted, her determination shining through her fear. "We need to understand what we're dealing with." I wanted to argue, but deep down, I knew she was right. Ignoring it wouldn't make it go away. It would only fester and grow stronger. With newfound resolve, we took a step back and sat down on the couch, facing the covered mirror. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like a banshee, rattling the windows and sending eerie shadows flickering across the walls. "Let's talk about what we saw," I said, glancing at Sarah, who was deep in thought. "I felt something in the air," she began, her voice steady. "When we were near that mirror, it was like it was feeding on our fear." "Exactly," I agreed. "It's not just a reflection, it's something that wants to trap us in its nightmare." "I think it's tied to the house," Sarah continued. "What if something happened here before? What if the mirror holds the memories of all the people who've lived here?" The thought sent a chill down my spine. I had seen the disarray in the house's history, the peeling wallpaper, the creaking floorboards, but I hadn't considered the possibility that the past lingered here, that it could reach out from beyond the veil of time. "Do you think we could find out more?" I asked, hope mingling with fear. "There must be records or something," Sarah replied, her brow furrowed. "We could check the local library or even ask neighbors if they know anything about the house." As we plotted our course of action, a heavy silence descended upon us, the kind that makes you acutely aware of every creak and groan of the house. I could feel the mirror watching us, even beneath its shroud of fabric, as if it knew we were planning to challenge it. The next morning, after a sleepless night filled with nightmares, Sarah and I set out for the local library. The sun shone bright, but the heaviness in my chest refused to lift. We searched through dusty archives, flipping through old newspapers and property records, looking for anything that might explain the house's dark energy. As we dug deeper, we found snippets of information that sent chills down my spine, stories of previous owners, strange occurrences, and a history that seemed to be drenched in sorrow. One entry caught my eye, a family who had mysteriously vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of despair. What if they were lost to the mirror? I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her face pale. "But whatever is happening here is connected to them. We have to be careful." I nodded, unease settling in my stomach like a stone. The more we uncovered, the more I felt like we were walking on the edge of a dark abyss, one misstep away from being consumed. As we left the library, the storm clouds began to gather again, heavy and dark. I glanced over at Sarah, her face set with determination. "We need to confront it," I said suddenly, my heart racing. We can't let it keep us in fear. She looked hesitant, but I could see the fire in her eyes. You're right. We have to face it together. We returned to the house, the air thick with tension as we approached the hallway. The mirror loomed large, covered but still ominous, its presence palpable. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat a reminder of the unknown that lay beneath the fabric. Are you ready? Sarah asked, her voice steady. No, I admitted, but I knew we had no choice. With trembling hands, we pulled the sheet off the mirror, the fabric falling away to reveal the glass's surface, shimmering slightly as if it were alive. For a moment, we both stood there, entranced by its depths. And then it happened. The shadows within began to swirl, forming shapes that flickered in and out of existence. I felt a surge of terror wash over me as the whispers returned, louder now, filling the room with a cacophony of voices. Anna. Sarah, they called, beckoning us closer. Stay back. I shouted, my voice breaking through the chaos. But as I stepped back, the glass rippled, and I caught a glimpse of the other reality, the version of myself trapped in that nightmare, her face twisted in fear, the shadows clawing at her, desperate to pull her in. In that moment, I realized the truth. The mirror was not just a portal, it was a predator, and it was hungry. What do we do? Sarah shouted over the din of whispers. We have to close it. I yelled, scrambling to think. We need to find a way to block it. Suddenly, a shadow lunged forward, a dark shape tearing through the barrier of glass, and I felt something icy wrap around my wrist. Panic surged through me as I fought against it, the grip tightening like a vice. Anna! Sarah screamed, reaching for me. With all my strength, I pulled free from the shadow's grasp, but it was too late. The darkness had seeped into the room, curling around us like tendrils of smoke, and the whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. Get out! I shouted, pushing Sarah toward the door. But as we turned to flee, the room shifted. The walls warped, the shadows deepened, and I felt the air grow thick with despair. Stay, with us, the voices called, each word laced with an intoxicating sorrow that threatened to pull me under. No! I screamed, my heart racing. We won't stay. With a burst of adrenaline, we ran, the darkness swirling around us, chasing us down the hallway as we stumbled toward the front door. The whispers clawed at my mind, the shadows reaching out, desperate to drag us back into the mirror's grasp. We burst through the door, the cool night air hitting our faces like a splash of cold water, snapping me back to reality. We stumbled down the porch steps and into the yard, gasping for breath, the darkness receding behind us. As we looked back at the house, the lights flickered ominously, and I knew the battle was far from over. The mirror was still there, waiting, lurking behind the glass, its hunger unabated. We need to find a way to break it, I gasped, my heart still pounding. If it's a portal, we can't let it keep feeding on us. Sarah nodded, determination hardening her expression. We will. We'll figure this out together. But deep down, I could feel the cold grip of fear tightening around my heart. The mirror was still hungry, and I could feel its eyes watching us from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The night air was thick with tension as Sarah and I stood in the yard, staring back at the house. The mirror loomed in the darkness, its presence like a malignant tumor on the otherwise quiet facade. I could feel the shadows reaching for us, clawing at the edges of my consciousness, whispering promises of terror and despair. Do you think it will come after us? Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would awaken something within the house. I don't know, I replied, my heart racing. But we need to be prepared. We can't let it control our lives any longer. We retreated to a nearby park, the cold night air refreshing against my skin. The trees loomed above us, their branches swaying in the breeze like skeletal fingers, but they offered a sense of safety, a barrier between us and the house. We sat on a bench, the adrenaline from our escape beginning to ebb, leaving behind a hollow sense of dread. We need to find out more about that family, I suggested, my mind racing with possibilities. If they vanished without a trace, maybe they left behind clues, something that can help us understand what we're dealing with. Right, Sarah agreed, her brow furrowing. I'll look up everything I can find about them. If we can learn what happened, maybe we can find a way to stop it. As we brainstormed ideas, the moon hung low in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the park. It felt surreal, like we were caught in a dream where shadows danced on the edges of reality. I could still hear the whispers echoing in my mind, taunting me with the knowledge that the mirror was still there, waiting. After some time, we returned to my house, our resolve hardening. The darkness felt oppressive as we approached the front door, and I hesitated, glancing back at Sarah. Are you sure about this? I asked, my voice shaking. She nodded, determination gleaming in her eyes. We have to face it, Anna. It's the only way. With a deep breath, I turned the doorknob and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet, the stillness wrapping around us like a shroud. As we moved down the hallway, I felt the familiar chill creeping up my spine. The mirror was still covered, but I could feel its energy pulsing just beneath the fabric. Let's go upstairs, I suggested, wanting to put some distance between us and the mirror. We can look through the old boxes in the attic. Maybe there's something in there that can help. We climbed the creaky stairs, each step amplifying the tension that hung in the air. The attic was dark and dusty, filled with forgotten memories and relics of the past. We rummaged through the boxes, sifting through clothes, toys, and other remnants of lives lived within these walls. Hours passed as we searched, but the attic remained silent, offering no answers. I felt a growing sense of frustration. What if we were too late? What if the darkness had already claimed us? Anna, look at this, Sarah called, pulling out a dusty old photo album from one of the boxes. I rushed over, my heart racing as she flipped it open. The pages were filled with sepia-toned photographs of a family that once lived here, their smiles frozen in time. As I scanned the images, I felt a strange connection to them. The mother had a hauntingly familiar face, and the children looked joyful, unaware of the darkness that loomed ahead. This is them, I said, pointing to a photo of a woman standing with her children in front of the house. They lived here, and then they just disappeared. Flipping through the pages, we came across a newspaper clipping tucked between the photos. The headline read, "Local family mysteriously vanishes, search efforts unsuccessful." My stomach dropped as I read the details, recounting the family's last known whereabouts and the search that ensued, only to end in despair. Anna, look at the date, Sarah said, her finger tracing the bottom of the clipping. They disappeared just days after moving in. Panic surged through me as I recalled our own recent move. Do you think the mirror is connected to their disappearance? I don't know, but it's definitely linked to something dark, Sarah replied, her voice trembling. We need to find a way to stop it before it consumes us too. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from downstairs, making us jump. What was that? I whispered, my heart racing. Let's check it out, Sarah suggested, her voice barely a whisper. As we crept back down the stairs, the air grew colder, and I could feel a palpable sense of dread hanging over us. The house felt alive, the shadows shifting as if they were watching our every move. When we reached the bottom of the stairs, we saw the front door ajar, swinging slightly as if inviting us back outside. My heart raced as I glanced at Sarah. "Did you leave it open?" "No," she replied, her face pale. "I closed it when we came in." The door creaked open wider, and an icy breeze swept through the hallway, sending shivers down my spine. "We need to get out of here," I urged, my instinct screaming for us to flee. But before we could turn to leave, a figure emerged from the shadows, the outline of a man, tall and thin, his features obscured by darkness. My breath caught in my throat as fear gripped me like a vice. "Stay with us," the figure whispered, the voice echoing through the hallway. "Who are you?" I stammered, panic rising within me. The figure stepped closer, and I could see the faint outline of a face, twisted in sorrow. "You cannot escape what has been awakened," he said, his voice laced with despair. "You are bound to this house, to the mirror." "No!" Sarah shouted, grabbing my arm. "We won't stay." With a surge of adrenaline, we bolted for the front door, the figure's haunting whispers following us as we ran. The air felt thick and suffocating, as if the house itself was trying to keep us trapped within its walls. We burst out into the night, the cool air hitting us like a wave. But as we turned to run, I glanced back at the house one last time and saw the mirror, its surface reflecting the darkness, pulsing like a heart. "What do we do now?" Sarah gasped, looking at me with wide, terrified eyes. "We need to find someone who can help us," I said, my mind racing. "There must be someone who understands this, who knows how to break the hold it has on us." As we made our way through the darkened streets, I could feel the mirror's presence lingering behind us, waiting, watching, its hunger insatiable. The storm clouds rolled in again, and I knew the worst was yet to come. The streets were eerily quiet as Sarah and I hurried away from the house, the weight of the darkness pressing down on us. The storm had gathered, dark clouds swirling ominously above, mirroring the turmoil within. I could still feel the echoes of the figure's voice, its chilling words etched in my mind. "You are bound to this house." "Where do we go?" Sarah asked, glancing around nervously, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. "There's an old bookstore a few blocks away," I replied, trying to recall its location. "The owner has lived here forever. Maybe he knows something about the house or the mirror." As we walked, the wind picked up, howling through the empty streets like a banshee. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting the darkness to come creeping back, but it remained at bay for the moment. The bookstore appeared at the end of the block, its neon sign flickering in the dim light. The warmth spilling from the windows felt inviting, a stark contrast to the chill of the night. We pushed open the heavy wooden door, and a bell chimed softly above us. The shop was cluttered with shelves stacked high with books, the air thick with the smell of old paper and ink. A figure stood behind the counter, an elderly man with graying hair and kind, knowing eyes. "Ah, you two look like you've seen a ghost," he said, smiling faintly as we approached. "What can I help you with?" "Mr. Thompson, we need your help," I said, my voice trembling. "There's something wrong with our house. We think it's connected to a mirror and to a family that disappeared." His expression shifted, concern clouding his features. "You should be careful with mirrors, my dear. They hold more than mere reflections." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, leaning forward, eager for answers. "There are tales of mirrors being gateways," Mr. Thompson replied, his voice low and grave. "They can trap souls or reveal truths best left hidden. What you're experiencing is not uncommon for that house." Do you know anything about the family that lived there? I pressed, my heart racing. He nodded slowly, pulling an old leather-bound book from beneath the counter. This contains the history of the house and its previous owners. But be warned, what you find might not be easy to bear. With shaking hands, I took the book from him, the weight of it feeling significant. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. We'll be careful. As we left the bookstore, the storm had intensified. Raindrops pelted against the pavement, creating a cacophony that mirrored the chaos inside me. We hurried back to my house, the book clutched tightly against my chest. Once inside, we sat at the kitchen table, the sound of the rain tapping against the windows like a persistent whisper. I opened the book, the pages yellowed and worn, revealing a history that felt both haunting and familiar. The first few pages recounted the house's construction, its first owners, and then there it was, the family who had vanished. Their names echoed in my mind, the Johnsons. As I read about their joys and struggles, I could feel their presence in the air, a tangible reminder of lives lost. The Johnson family moved in with high hopes, but tragedy struck soon after. I read aloud, my voice barely above a whisper. Local rumors suggest they encountered strange happenings, whispers in the night, shadows lurking just beyond sight. What else does it say? Sarah asked, leaning in closer, her breath held in anticipation. I hesitated, swallowing hard. They began to experience nightmares, visions of something dark lurking just beyond their view. And then, just weeks after they moved in, they vanished without a trace. The silence in the room grew heavy as we processed the weight of the words. Do you think the mirror could have taken them? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. It's possible, I replied, my heart racing. We need to find out how to break its hold before it consumes us too. As I continued to read, I discovered references to a local legend about mirrors, a ritual said to sever the connection between the mirror and whatever darkness it harbored. It was a long shot, but it felt like our only hope. There's a mention of a gathering during a full moon, I said, my voice tinged with urgency. It says that if you confront the mirror under the light of the full moon and recite the incantation, it might weaken its hold. What do we have to lose? Sarah said, determination shining in her eyes. When's the next full moon? I flipped through the pages, skimming for the information. In 2 days, I replied, my heart pounding. We'll have to prepare. We need to gather everything we can find about the ritual. Let's do it, she said, the fire in her voice igniting my own resolve. The rain continued to pound against the roof, a constant reminder of the darkness that loomed outside. As we made our plans, I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The shadows were still there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Over the next 2 days, we scoured the town for anything that might help us, candles, herbs, anything that felt connected to the ritual. Each night was filled with anxiety as we prepared, the whispers from the mirror still echoing in our minds, reminding us of the urgency of our situation. Finally, the night of the full moon arrived. The sky was a blanket of stars, the moon shining bright, casting an eerie glow over everything. I felt a mixture of fear and anticipation as we stood in front of the covered mirror, our hearts pounding in sync. Are you ready? Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. I nodded, gripping the book tightly. Let's do this. With trembling hands, we pulled the sheet away, revealing the mirror's surface, now shimmering under the moonlight. The shadows inside danced, shifting and swirling as if agitated by our presence. Focus, I whispered, trying to push back the fear threatening to engulf me. We can do this. We stood side by side, the book open between us, the words of the incantation written on the page. I took a deep breath and began to recite the words, my voice shaking but determined. By the light of the moon and the power of the night, I break the chains that bind you tight. The shadows inside the mirror writhed, as if they were alive, the whispers growing louder. Stay with us. Keep going, Sarah urged, her voice a lifeline in a storm of sound. I continued, the words pouring from my lips, each syllable a strike against the darkness. You shall not claim my soul or my kin. This is your end, you cannot win. As the final words escaped my mouth, a brilliant light erupted from the mirror, illuminating the room. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of despair, as the mirror pulsed and throbbed, fighting against the incantation. Stay strong, I shouted, gripping Sarah's hand tightly. The light grew brighter, pushing against the shadows, forcing them back into the depths of the mirror. I could feel the power of the incantation coursing through me, amplifying my resolve. Release them. You have no hold over us. I cried, the energy surging as the mirror began to crack, lines spreading like veins across its surface. The whispers turned to screams, a sound that chilled me to the bone. No! You cannot escape. With a final surge of energy, I shouted the last line of the incantation, and the mirror exploded in a shower of glass and light. I shielded my eyes, and when I looked again, the shadows were gone, leaving only silence in their wake. We stood there, breathing heavily, the remnants of the mirror scattered around us. The air felt lighter, as if the oppressive weight had finally been lifted. We did it, Sarah breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. Yes, I said, tears of relief spilling down my cheeks. But at what cost? As we surveyed the destruction, I felt an unsettling sense of emptiness. The whispers were gone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness had only retreated, waiting for another opportunity to strike. The remnants of the mirror lay scattered on the floor, glistening like shards of ice beneath the moonlight that spilled through the windows. I stood there, heart racing, adrenaline coursing through my veins. We had shattered the mirror, but the aftermath felt hollow, a fleeting victory against the weight of uncertainty that still pressed against my chest. Are you okay? Sarah asked, her voice laced with concern. I turned to her, forcing a smile despite the turmoil within. I think so. We really did it. But even as I spoke, a shadow flickered at the edge of my vision, and my heart sank. Did we? The silence that enveloped the room felt oppressive, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. I could feel the heaviness in the air, as if the house itself was holding its breath. We need to clean this up, Sarah said, breaking the tension. We can't leave it like this. Right, I replied, my voice shaky. We knelt down to gather the shards, but as we moved, a chill crept up my spine. I glanced around, half expecting the shadows to return, but the room remained eerily still. After an hour of cleaning, the remnants of the mirror were mostly cleared away. The moonlight poured through the windows, illuminating the space with a serene glow, yet I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. Do you think it's really over? I asked, glancing at Sarah. She hesitated, her expression pensive. I don't know. The stories always say that once you disturb a spirit, it can take time for things to settle. As we settled back onto the couch, exhaustion washed over me. The fear and adrenaline had left me drained, and I leaned against Sarah, seeking comfort in her presence. Maybe we should try to get some sleep, I suggested, my voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, maybe, she replied, though I could tell she wasn't convinced. We retreated to the bedroom, but sleep felt elusive. The shadows of the night seemed to wrap around us, a lingering reminder of what we had faced. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the echoes of the past haunting me. Just as I began to drift off, a loud bang reverberated through the house, jolting me awake. I shot up, heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" Sarah nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "It came from downstairs." We exchanged a glance, both of us caught in a moment of uncertainty. "Should we check it out?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Maybe it's just the wind," she said, but I could hear the quiver in her tone. "I don't think so," I replied, feeling a mix of dread and curiosity. "We need to know what it is." Together, we crept down the hallway, the wooden floors creaking beneath our feet. The house felt different now, unfamiliar and foreign, the shadows more pronounced, as if they were watching us, waiting for us to falter. As we reached the living room, my breath caught in my throat. The furniture had been rearranged, the couch pushed aside, and a pile of shattered glass remained in the middle of the room. "It looks like something was trying to get out," Sarah whispered, stepping closer to the shards. "No," I breathed, dread settling in my stomach. "We broke the mirror." "It shouldn't be able to." Before I could finish my thought, the temperature in the room dropped drastically, the air thick with an overwhelming presence. Shadows began to swirl, coalescing in the corner of the room, taking on a form that sent chills racing down my spine. "Stay back," I shouted, instinctively stepping in front of Sarah. The shadows took shape, the figure of the man we had seen before materializing before us. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, filled with a mixture of sorrow and rage. "You cannot escape," he hissed, the sound reverberating through the air. "You have only made it stronger." "No!" I shouted, shaking with fear. "We broke the mirror. You have no hold over us." His laughter echoed, a chilling sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "The mirror was but a gateway. You have disturbed forces far beyond your comprehension." The shadows began to move closer, tendrils reaching out toward us. I felt panic rise within me, my instincts screaming for me to flee. "Anna, what do we do?" Sarah cried, backing away. "We have to find a way to banish it for good." I shouted, searching for anything we could use. "The book. There must be something in there." We bolted back towards the kitchen, the figure's laughter trailing behind us. I grabbed the book, flipping through the pages desperately, heart racing as the shadows loomed closer. "There has to be a way to send it back," I murmured, scanning the text frantically. "Here," Sarah exclaimed, pointing to a passage. "It says if you summon the light of the moon with the right incantation, you can banish it." "Then we have to do it now," I shouted, adrenaline fueling my movements. "Quick! What do we need?" Sarah asked, glancing back toward the living room where the shadows were closing in. "Candles. We need candles," I yelled, rushing to gather them from the kitchen drawer. I lit them, creating a circle around us, the warm glow contrasting against the encroaching darkness. "Now, say the words with me," I commanded, our voices trembling but resolute. As we recited the incantation, the room began to vibrate, the shadows flickering and retreating in response to the growing light. The figure howled in rage, a sound that sent ice coursing through my veins. "Release me," it screamed, thrashing against the barrier of light. "You cannot hold me." "We can and we will," I shouted, my voice rising above the chaos. As we finished the incantation, the candles blazed brighter, illuminating the room in a blinding light. The shadows shrieked, and with a final surge, they were pulled back, the figure disintegrating into the ether, the house trembling around us. The light enveloped the room, and for a brief moment, I felt a weight lift from my chest. But just as quickly as it had come, the light flickered, the candles sputtering out as the shadows retreated completely. Breathless, Sarah and I collapsed to the floor, the remnants of our fear still clinging to us. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice shaking. I don't know," I replied, glancing around the room, still on edge. The air felt lighter, but I knew deep down that the fight was far from over. The darkness had retreated, but it was clear it wouldn't be gone for long. "What do we do now?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with lingering fear. "We need to find a way to protect ourselves," I replied, my heart heavy. "We can't let this happen again. We need to understand what we're up against." As the shadows danced at the edges of my vision, I realized that the battle was just beginning. The night wore on, silence settling heavily around us as we caught our breath on the floor of the living room. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing the dread that lingered in the air. We had managed to drive the shadow figure away, for now, but I could feel it lurking just beyond the veil, waiting for another opportunity to strike. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with," I said, my voice steadying as I rose to my feet. "There has to be something more in the book, something that explains this." Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the pages as I grabbed the old leather-bound book from the floor. We hurried back to the couch, the flickering remnants of our candles casting eerie shadows across the walls. "Here," Sarah said, flipping through the pages with urgency. "There must be a section about the spirit or whatever it is that's haunting us." I could feel my pulse quickening as I watched her search. The shadows still whispered at the corners of my vision, but I forced myself to focus on the task at hand. As she flipped through the pages, she suddenly stopped. "Anna, look at this." I leaned over her shoulder, reading the words as she pointed. "The Shadow Man," it said. "A malevolent entity said to inhabit mirrors and other reflective surfaces. It is believed to be a collector of souls, drawn to those who have experienced trauma or fear." "What does it say we can do?" I asked, anxiety twisting in my stomach. Sarah continued reading. "To defeat the Shadow Man, one must confront their own fears and insecurities. The ritual requires not just the incantation, but also a reflection of one's true self in the presence of the entity. Only by embracing the darkness within can one hope to overcome the darkness outside." "Embracing our darkness?" I echoed, feeling a chill run down my spine. "What does that even mean?" "It means we need to confront whatever fears we have," Sarah said, her voice firm. "This is not just about fighting a shadow, it's about understanding ourselves and what we've been through." "But how do we do that?" I asked, glancing nervously toward the dark corners of the room. "We have to look into the mirror again," she replied, determination shining in her eyes. "We have to face the Shadow Man, together." The thought sent a jolt of fear through me, but deep down, I knew she was right. Avoiding it wouldn't make it go away. We had to confront it head on. "Okay," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let's do it." We made our way back to the spot where the mirror had once hung, the air thick with anticipation. I felt the weight of the book in my hands, a reminder of the journey we had taken and the battles still ahead. "Are you ready?" I asked, glancing at Sarah. She nodded, her expression resolute. "As ready as we'll ever be." Together, we cleared the space, taking a deep breath as we prepared to face whatever lay ahead. On the count of 3, I said, holding the book tightly. 1, 2, 3. We stood before the wall where the mirror had been, facing the empty space. I felt a rush of fear but pushed it aside, focusing on the words from the book. By the power of the moon and the light that it brings, I summon you, Shadow Man, from the darkness you cling. I began, my voice steady. The air grew cold, and the shadows began to twist and coil around us, gathering in the empty space. I could feel the energy shift, the palpable tension drawing tighter as the darkness coalesced into a familiar shape. Foolish mortals, the Shadow Man hissed, his voice a low growl. You think you can defeat me? Yes, I replied, the fear in my heart replaced by a surge of defiance. We know what you are. You feed on our fears, but we will not let you take us. His laughter echoed, chilling me to the core. You think you can confront your darkness? You will only find despair. I could feel the weight of my fears crashing down on me, the memories of pain, the echoes of doubt. But I stood my ground, remembering Sarah beside me, drawing strength from her presence. Your darkness does not define us, I shouted, raising the book high. We embrace our fears, but we will not be consumed. As I recited the next line of the incantation, the shadows twisted violently, recoiling as if struck. With light I bind you, with truth I bind you, with the power of our souls, we will find you. The Shadow Man howled in rage, the shadows flickering and wavering. No, you cannot bind me. But we pressed on, chanting together, our voices blending in a powerful harmony. With the light of the moon and the strength of our hearts, we summon the truth, tearing you apart. The room erupted in blinding light, the shadows shrieking and writhing in response. I felt the energy surge around us, a force pushing back against the darkness. Embrace your true self, Sarah cried, her voice cutting through the chaos. We are stronger than our fears. I closed my eyes, feeling the truth of her words resonating within me. I let the memories wash over me, the pain, the regret, the fears that had held me captive for so long. I accepted them, acknowledging their existence, but refusing to let them control me. As the light grew brighter, the Shadow Man began to dissipate, his form breaking apart like smoke in the wind. You cannot escape me, he screamed, but the conviction in his voice wavered. Watch us, I shouted, feeling a fierce joy rising within me. We are free. With one final incantation, we unleashed the last of our energy, the light bursting forth in a brilliant explosion. The darkness shattered, and with it, the Shadow Man was consumed, vanishing into nothingness. The air grew still, the silence deafening as the remnants of the battle faded away. I opened my eyes, blinking against the brightness that enveloped us. We did it, Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe. Yes, I breathed, tears of relief streaming down my cheeks. It's over. But as I looked around the room, a new sense of uncertainty washed over me. The shadows that had once haunted us were gone, but what would remain in their place? As the first rays of dawn filtered through the windows, I felt a sense of hope blossoming within me. We had faced our fears and emerged victorious, but the journey was just beginning. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together, I said, looking into Sarah's eyes, feeling the strength of our bond. Yes, she replied, a smile breaking through her fear. Together. As the sun rose, casting light across the room, I took a deep breath, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The past would always be a part of me, but I refused to let it define my future. We had fought back the darkness, and now it was time to step into the light. With a newfound sense of purpose, We began to clean the remnants of the night, ready to rebuild our lives and face the world beyond the shadows, side by side. Months later, as I stood in the living room, sunlight streaming through the windows, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The house felt different now, alive and welcoming, the shadows of the past slowly fading away. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared lunch, a reminder of the joy we had fought so hard to reclaim. I could hear her laughter, bright and clear, and it filled my heart with warmth. We had come a long way since that night of terror, learning to embrace our fears and the experiences that shaped us. The memory of the shadow man lingered in my mind, but it no longer held power over me. As I looked at the mirrorless wall, I felt grateful for the journey that had led us here. It had been painful and terrifying, but it had also shown me the strength within myself and the beauty of true friendship. "Hey, are you ready to eat?" Sarah called, breaking me from my thoughts. I smiled, walking into the kitchen, the scent of her cooking enveloping me like a warm hug. "Yes, I am. And I'm ready for whatever comes next." Together, we embraced the light of a new day, ready to face the future hand in hand, the shadows of our past finally behind us. Hope your dreams are filled with fear. Good night.